Good.
When did you get back from Texas, Paul?
Got back on Wednesday night. So it's been almost a week.
Dave was there, and then you, and then me, all in a row.
Oh boy. And the state is still there.
Yeah,
Hey.
it survived us.
I am telling you, I had the most fantastic barbecue.
So did I.
Oh my goodness.
Where did you have it?
So good. Well, I don't want to make this a long story, but I served my mission there. And in my first area, there was this, our landlord her name was Ma Pope, and she would about once a week go and get us barbecue from this place called Angelo's. It's just outside of Fort Worth. That was 38 years ago. I didn't expect the place to still exist, but it does. And this was the first time I actually went inside because I'd always eaten it, takeout. The inside is the most Texas looking place.
Oh, yeah. They're the
I mean,
best.
they had animal mounts all around the entire thing, including an alligator mounted on the wall. It was incredible. And they all spoke Texan, as my wife said, and it was hilarious. So we had a great
I
time.
used
I
to
don't know
go
what
to a
y'all
place
talking
on the
about.
south side of Fort Worth called something to do with railroad crossing or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Barbecue, really good. But all the animals around. There's a place in Denver. I can't remember the name of it, but it has all of these animals in there. There's whales and you can get rattlesnake and elk and all these other kind of stuff to eat. It's just really good.
Mine was called the Red Barn, and it was melt in your mouth and had the best fried okra I've ever had.
So they definitely had all the, brisket and standard, but they also had smoked turkey.
Oh yeah.
And when you would pinch it, it would just drip.
It was just, wow.
It was so much.
Cool. I'll have to check that out. Okay.
That's
Sorry,
science good
folks.
stuff.
All
Sounds
right,
like
let-
we need to order in some barbecue for.
I know. I should have
I
brought,
went to
R&R
dinners.
barbecue today. It's good.
Oh,
It is
yeah,
good,
R&R's good.
but not near as good as what I had last week. Okay, well, next time I go in August, maybe I'll bring back barbecue for everybody. That'd be good. I could do that. All right.
Mhm.
Let's convene this work session, Tuesday, May 11th, 2021, work session for the City Council of the City of Woodland Hills. It's about 5:05. And, we're doing a public hearing first. Yes, thank you. Our city recorder has corrected me, luckily. I was testing her. Good job, Jody. We will convene our public hearing on the proposed 2022 fiscal year budget. Jody, do you have anybody signed up to speak? Did you have anything you wanted to say? Okay. All right, well, we'll sit here for like 60 more seconds and then close the public hearing if nobody wants to speak.
We did receive an email about the budget. I'm surprised that there's not someone here to speak to that. It was a quite lengthy.
I did not receive an email.
I don't remember hearing an email.
Yeah, I received one as well.
It was quite lengthy too. But if they're not here to speak to it, then I guess we're good to go.
Jody, I can send it on to you if you'd like.
Maybe
Was
send it
the
to the,
request to be part of the official minutes, because if they weren't requested to be
No.
part of official minutes,
No,
No.
they were not.
just
then
one-
I
Just
shouldn't.
a comment.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, well, anybody else online that wasn't there before, Jody?
I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Anyone that would like to, speak? All right, well, hearing no public comment, then I will close the public hearing. And we will convene our work session. And the first item on the agenda for the work session is the 2020 water bond and road fund allocations to complete the water line replacement project Corbett and Ted, I'll turn this over to you.
Ben, if you can't tell, I got my finger on my nose. You're up.
I don't know which one of you wants to speak, but
Yeah,
I mean, both Teds are cute.
yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I think what this item was about, and Corbett, I can go ahead and speak to it if you want, is talking about, I'm going to share my screen if you guys can see it. Hold on, I'm sharing the wrong item.
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. So there was a discussion with the Public Works Committee about how to use the water fund money that we have allocated for paving roads and possibly use some of our road bond money to pave some roads as well. And maybe pave more roads than we originally planned. And so jumping back just a little bit, as you'll recall, some time ago, we requested an additional 400,000 from the Division of Drinking Water for paving roads as part of the water project that were getting some pretty severe damage. And at the time, that included a full width, they call it pulverizing, and repaving of Broad Hollow and Spring. So when we got that funding, that was kind of the intent. So that was the money we acquired. And then we, during the course of the project, in talking with the road committee, thought, well, what if rather than do Spring and Broad Hollow, because Lower Oak is also planned to be repaved, which I think has actually started this week. The portion of Oak where we have water line, rather than do Spring and Broad Hollow, since we're doing the lower portion of Oak, and we'll call it the lower 2/3 or whatever, maybe we redo all the connecting cul-de-sacs to Oak that are getting water line in them, because those cul-de-sacs are getting pretty beaten up as well. But we also felt that we had some obligation to do Spring and Broad Hollow, since those were the original roads that we had planned to do when we got the funding. After we started the waterline project, we then also did Pine View while we were doing, it was Broad Hollow, because it was right there and it was a short piece. And so we were able to squeeze that into the project. So that's kind of the background. So what we did is we worked with kind of the road committee, or excuse me, the Public Works Committee, and we looked at options, 3 different options to use both water funds and road bond money in various scenarios. And we kind of summarized this into 3 options. I worked with LEI and the contractor and developed this spreadsheet of the 3 options. And so if we look at option number 1, that is basically our original plan. And when we got the additional funding from the Division of Drinking Water, was to do Lower Oak, East Spring, and Broad Hollow. That was roughly $360,000. And the available water funds that we chased were a little over 400, but we got some of that for some additional water as well. So basically we have 361,000 available water fund money to go towards these roads. So basically, summary is we can do our original option because that's what was planned without any additional money required from the road funds. Option 2,
Water.
What's that?
That would all be, option 1 is all water funds, correct?
Correct. All water funds is option 1.
You said road, right?
He did. So
Okay.
you,
All right.
you were right to correct it.
Thanks.
Sorry. Option 2 is to do all of the cul-de-sacs connecting to Oak that we are replacing water lines in. And because we felt some obligation to Broad Hollow and East Spring, and then we also threw Pine View in the mix.
Can I ask a question?
We looked at those streets as well. So option 2 is to do all of the connecting cul-de-sacs to Oak with water fund money, which we can almost do. We fall about $2,500 short, which I think we can make some adjustments to that and be able to basically do all of these with the water fund money. But then that leaves Broad Hollow, East Spring, and Pine View that would require road bond money to complete those streets.
Okay, Ted,
Yes,
Bob has a question.
Can you help me understand? Can you hear me okay?
yes.
Can you help me understand the difference in the cost between option 1 and option 2 on Broad Hollow and East Spring and Pine View? So in option 1, Broad Hollow's 73,000, but on option 2, it's 106,000.
Good catch, Bob. So in option 1, because we would not pave the trench sections, we would leave those unpaved. We get that credit back from the contractor to apply towards paving the entire width of the street. In option 2, we would have to pave the entire width of the street because it would be a separate city project from the water project.
Okay.
So in other words, it would be a separate contractor, separate bid package. So we don't get that credit back from the contractor.
Great. That answers it. Thank you.
So in option 2, it would require $270,000 of the road bond money to be allocated to Broad Hollow, East Spring, and Pine View. And then the rest of these streets we could do with the water fund money. So with that commitment, we could do more streets basically. They're being impacted by the water. Now, option 3 is if we were to do all of the streets that are impacted with the water project, we essentially could do the same streets as option 2 in addition to Lakeview Way because we get credit money back. But then that would leave, if we want to do the rest of the streets with road bond money, it would basically use $580,000 of the road bond money. And that's to do all of the streets, which just about chews up all the road bond money. So, sorry, I'm going between 2 different screens here. And I think after hearing back from the Public Works Committee and some of those that have reviewed this, most of them seem to be leaning towards option 2, which means we would do Oak and all of the connecting cul-de-sacs with water funds, and then use a portion of the road funds, road bond money, to do Broad Hollow, East Spring, and Pine View. And that would have to be a separate city project. Does that summarize
Can you
it?
scroll up and show us option 3 again?
Oh, sorry. You gotta remember which screen I'm trying to operate.
Ted, I got a question for you. Hello?
Yes.
On option 3, haven't we already got a commitment from Geneva to hold their current price?
Not a commitment, but they said if we were to put out the city project fairly quickly, soon, they could hold their price they currently have that they're doing as part of the water project. In other words, they would hold the 225 a square foot.
Which would eliminate the 15% inflation, right?
Right. Which would eliminate the 15% inflation.
Also, on option 3, we don't have any trench savings, any savings from the road trench patching on the rest of the roads.
Correct.
to
because
utilize
that would
road
come out of-
bond
That would
funds.
come out of this contract and we couldn't use it in this contract. Two separate.
So let me ask some clarifying question there. So you're saying that both the roads for water fund wouldn't have that along with the recommended roads for bond fund? Neither one of them would enjoy that discount?
Neither one of them would need the 15% inflation.
Yes,
If
I
we,
understand that part, but you said something about a discount because of the water work, something, I'm sorry. I
you're
didn't-
doing two different projects, two different funding streams.
Correct, but
Yeah,
both of so the roads for water fund would have the same discounts because of patching for options 2 and option 3.
Only for a portion of option 3.
I-
On that, Ted, can we,
The left-hand column would enjoy it, the right-hand column would not.
correct.
Right.
Okay,
You're-
thank
you're
you.
correct, Bob.
Ted, could we not release VanCon from the patching requirement?
We could, but we couldn't take that money and apply it to the road repave. It would have to be, we could maybe extend the water project a little more, do a little more work as part of the water project. But we still would have to have this amount of money from the road bond to do these roads.
Okay, so,
We can't
Yeah.
take money out of the
I-
water project and put it in our road bond money.
so on option 3, where we've got the Broad Hollow, the right-hand side of option 3, Broad Hollow, East Spring, Pineview,
Mhm.
those roads have a trench, if we got the trench credit on those roads, it's a total of $120,847.23. I just added up the trench credit from the determination of cost spreadsheet. Couldn't we take that 120,000, 121,000 and do that much more road? And take that 120 basically off of the recommendations for road bond funds and do another $120,000 worth of work, which would then reduce that column by 120,000.
Can you add to that 120,000, the 76,000 for inflation? Or is that a different color of money that you can't use for that?
Well, Corbett, so what I did is I took the savings from the trench and we did more road. That's what I've done in option 3.
But does that trench savings include Broad Hollow, East Spring, Pineview, West Spring, that right-hand column on option 3?
I believe it does.
Okay.
So where it says available funds plus road bond trench savings, see, up here I added in trench savings from East Spring because we would then we would be able to save it because we'd have to, we couldn't transfer the funds, so we'd have to save it. So you can see how it says available funds plus East Spring trench savings. Now, Broad Hollow, they've already patched that. So we can't transfer that money because they already applied that to the trench patch. So Broad Hollow's out of the picture. That's been paid for as a patch.
But didn't they tell us in one of our meetings that trench patch was at their option? They still have to come back and do a T-patch,
Yeah.
dig it out and do a T-patch. That was just a temporary patch, so they didn't have to deal with it all winter long.
Yeah, and that was part of their cost that they were getting as part of the road. So, and the short of it is, again, without getting into the really deep weeds here, there is a portion of Broad Hollow in this, but not all. Because
Okay.
we've already paid the money, so we can't get it back.
So I'm also noticing Lakeview Ways on both sides of option 3.
Yeah, you're right, and let me check that.
I think we should do the left option. It's cheaper. And what about West Loper? How does that figure into all of this? Because that's
Yes.
got to be road money.
Well, yeah, but may I recommend that we not confuse the issue?
Yeah, well, except
Because-
that option 3 spends all our
Well,
funds.
so just to give you a little color of the meeting that we had, the Public Works Committee went around and around and around for about almost 40 minutes on this. And so Ted has done a great job, and Wayne helped quite a bit in summarizing it down to just the 3 options. We went through probably 20 options of different things. And what it basically came down to is we felt as a committee that our first priority was to make the roads whole from the water project. The second priority for the was West Loafer.
Okay.
But that fell in priority number 2.
Okay,
So yes, it's there.
okay,
It's very important. We want to get it done, but it depends on which option we choose here as to whether we'll have money left to do West Loafer or not.
just making sure it's still on the radar.
Definitely on the radar.
Okay, thank
So-
you.
So can I ask some what-if questions?
If you want to go through the 20 options we
No.
went through, you bet.
Nope. Maybe just one. And it's a risk option. So we're supposed to be getting some Fed money for projects. We don't know how much and we don't know when.
I can talk to that a little bit.
Would you please?
Yes, we're anticipated to get just over or just about $177,000 from that federal project. I have recently, I mean, it won't come to us for a while. It will come to the state first, then to the larger cities, and then to us sometime, they're hoping in June. We will get half of it now and half of it next year. It can be used for this project. The state is getting nearly $2 billion, and they are anticipating, because our children and grandchildren will be paying for this, that they would like the money, the state money, to be used for long-term projects that will benefit those that will be paying for it. I've been in
So
contact.
is that the only restriction, the only ties on that money is, and it sounds like is the state mandating that as a tie, or would they
No.
like to be used tie? Is it a
That's-
like?
It's a like to be. Now, as cities, we have the autonomy to use our own money as we see fit. That's autonomous. But if we would like to, I talked with the governor, gosh, about a week or 2 ago, and he said that his idea was to be able to match the city's funds with some state money if it was for infrastructure type projects. So then I've been in contact with the governor's office of budget, as well as the legislature, because the legislature ultimately will be allocating these funds. And so I have requested, I told them that we have a shovel-ready project for phase 2, and that we would like to consider a match. Ted and I went over the numbers. Our phase 2 is about 3.55 million. And I asked if they would pay for it all, or if they only want to give us part, or if they just want to match the amount that we're going to get from the ARP. So they're going into session, a special session next week. They have interim meetings on the 18th with a special session on the 19th. And I'm told that we are now on that docket to consider how much funding we may potentially get. But they do know that we have that apart, and minimum we would get a match, maximum maybe, because it's only 3.55 million. It's small compared to some of the other asks, so they may give us more.
So let me understand this. 3.55 million on top of the 177,000.
No, 3.55 million is our total phase 2 project cost.
So there's kind of 2 things that Carrie's talking about. So let me
Please.
maybe help.
Yeah.
So we think we are definitely going to get the 177,000.
Okay.
Yes, that will come directly from the treasury to our city.
And there are federal restrictions on that. And
There are some federal restrictions on that money. It is similar to how we had our CARES money, where we let the county help us with all the paperwork. We would have to do that paperwork ourselves. The league has considered hiring someone to help all the cities fill out their paperwork, because this will be a more complex paperwork system that's going on. And so I put Chris's name on the forms to be responsible for that communication back and forth, as being responsible for that funding stream coming in. So we will get that 177 regardless of what the state chooses to do. I have just petitioned the state with our water line project, saying that it's a long-term project. We're shovel ready, and we would like them to help us with this using state funds, not our funds. I mean, we would use our funds too, but that they would consider either a match or more than a match or the whole thing.
So the state is also getting 2
Yes.
billion.
Yes, yes,
as
on top of our money, they will
And
be getting 2 billion.
Carrie has requested 3.5 million of that 2 billion
For
Or-
water.
for our water project.
She's really requested like 3.32.
of it,
Okay, and so
whatever.
then
There's
that
two
money
pools of
would,
money.
would do additional water and replacing the roads.
Well, it would do our next phase of water replacement,
Right,
however
it's
we.
phase 2 of our water project, which is Maple,
Yeah.
and kind of some of the roads over on this side.
So,
So
It
does,
would-
does
it would
does the phase
replace
two
all
consume
of the-
all 3 million of that dollars?
Do what?
Yes,
Does phase two consume all of that 3 million?
Yes.
yes.
That's
Phase
all of
2
That's
is
why we would-
3.55.
That would replace all of the left, all of the remaining 6-inch pipe.
So there would only be 2 phases.
Yes, so this phase 2A
Okay.
that you're looking at
Uh-huh.
is part of that 3.5
Well,
million.
and also keep in mind, phase 3 was always, well, it was basically Thousand Oaks.
Yep.
Which we never really intended.
it was
on
always
doing
into the
anyway.
future.
It was always like way in the future.
Okay, great.
So I think to the discussion we're having right now that Ted's talking to us about, Carrie is suggesting that we not count on any of that ARP money for this,
Yeah,
because we need to push it to our phase 2 water
The-
project.
Even the 177.
Yes.
yes, that we would push
Now-
that to phase 2 so that we can use that as either part of the match or just part of the overall amount that they might give us. They were very
So our
impressed that we
contribution.
were ready to go.
So on the 177,
Mhm.
You said that there were strings attached and that we're gonna have to do paperwork, blah, blah, blah. Are the strings, would the strings prevent us from using it on either roads or water?
No, we can use it for anything COVID related, or we can use it for infrastructure for water, roads, or sewer.
I thought it was water broadband or.
And well, and broadband is also in there, but I'm not throwing that in
I
because
haven't
we're
seen
good with
roads
that.
on any of the lists.
Yeah, but for regular infrastructure that would pertain to us, it was water, roads, or sewer. And I petitioned the state for water because that's really the biggest expense if the overall project of 3
But I
5
really
million.
haven't seen roads on any of the lists, but I'm going to go to the training.
So
and then
just so you
see.
know, again, this is coming from the Public Works Committee. There are other road projects too within the city. West Loafer was the top priority, but right behind it is Bear something, Bear Hollow.
Mhm.
So I guess the reason I even communicate this is we're not lacking
Right.
projects.
Right.
We
Right.
got-
Well, but also consider that we're learning from our mistakes, or we're learning from our experience. And so phase 2 includes full width pulverize and new
Yeah.
asphalt.
Great. That's great.
So it's not a road project specifically, it's a road repair from the damage done by the water main.
Because we know that when
Yes.
we do the water.
Sure,
it's gonna
absolutely. And
eat
so
up the
then,
road.
implied in the difference between option 2 and option 3, it seemed like that the committee was recommending to have some surplus bond money for other projects. That's why the comment on option 3 that it would use all of the bond money, or just about all the bond money. So I assume that there's some sort of concern or desire to use that money on other roads. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, we kind of have to. Meaning the road bond has to be used on roads.
I understand.
But the only other roads you're even considering are West Loafer. The only other roads that aren't on this list in its entirety is West Loafer and Bear Hollow.
Okay. The reason for asking, I'm just trying to understand the pros and the cons of going with option 2 or option 3. There's a strong part of me that would say, I'd love to do option 3. But if we need that surplus money from the bond for other roads that are a priority but not related to water, then maybe we ought to do option 2.
Yeah.
Does that make sense where I'm
Yeah,
coming from?
option 2 is kind of the safe option, and option 3 is the ambitious option.
Well, I'm a gambler.
But ambition is not a bad thing. All of our roads need replaced.
Absolutely.
But again, in option 3, the only road you're not considering is West Loafer and Bear Hollow.
Well, and to be
So
honest,
you're doing option 2 and you're saving, you're holding on to $300,000. But what are you going to do with that 300? Are you going to do West Loafer and Bear Hollow, or some of these other roads that are included in option 3 right
Okay.
now?
The
so-
other issue that really comes into play, and I mean big time, is the fact that we've got a contractor here.
Mhm.
He's got the equipment on site. He's working,
oh, absolutely.
and that turns out to be a huge issue, because that is what we have fought for years and years.
Absolutely.
is getting
And
the
that's one of the
contractor
reasons
here.
why I lean towards option 3. And so the gambling part of me says, let's look forward to some of this Fed money that we haven't got yet to do those other 2 roads.
Well, and it
And
also
let's go with
sounds
option
like
3.
The 177 is coming in 2 chunks. One sometime
is.
this year.
2
one
tranches.
Sometime next year.
Yeah, we'll get half this year and half next year. But if we use it to do those 2 roads, then the state might not give us the matching for the 3.55 million.
Yeah, they're
Well,
we're
so
gonna be
they're
a lot
gonna-
more likely to get that money if they can see us give it.
Yep.
lower Loafer is basically a problem created by sewer, not water. Okay,
West
never
Loafer.
mind.
West Loafer.
Okay,
Never
so Ted, could I ask a question on option 3? With option 3 on the water funds, what I'm seeing is that we would have $8,000 left of water funds. And then,
Yeah, but we, I like to leave just a little cushion because you never know what's going to change, but you're right.
sure.
1,000 left.
And then on the right-hand side with the road bond funds, if we go option 3, we'll essentially end up with about 60. Well, I don't know, because we're basically going to break even. We're going to use all of our road bond funds.
Isn't that road bond fund 680 or 650?
He's adding things as we speak. Okay, so we'd have 164 left. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yep.
And
I took
approximately
out
what
like-
is our share of the lower Loafer gonna be?
West Loafer.
Yeah, West Loafer, I'm sorry.
We don't have a good bid there because
But do
we're
we
gonna
have
have to
some-
replace a culvert. We're
Do we
gonna
have a swag?
Well, we got a bid for it, and it was to do everything, and
Yeah.
it was 90.
Was that for the
Three.
culvert replacement?
Yeah, that included the culvert.
Okay.
It was 93 or something like that.
93. And that includes paving, and that includes
That
just
includes-
our half of it, or,
Concrete on both
No,
sides.
that was just our half. And
Okay.
That was curbing, high back curb, culvert, inlet boxes, and the flow line.
so if we have that 165-ish, I say we add West Loafer on it.
Yeah,
Since we got that.
yeah.
It will, but what I think Bob's saying is the bid was for 90. We have 165. Would it have doubled? Maybe. I mean,
Maybe, but let's at least explore it.
Yeah.
And let's, I just,
Carrie?
when I visualize option 3, I get really excited about what our city infrastructure will look like. Yeah,
Carrie, when do you anticipate the state making their decision about their?
Well, they're meeting for their special session next week on the 19th. They'll have interim meetings and they'll be discussing some of the requests that are coming in. And they meet on the 19th. I don't know if all the decisions will be made, but I know that we're at one of the top on the list at this point for water. Our own Senator McKell, is on that committee and has kind of said that he'll help us push for that to see how much we can get. I don't know exactly how long that might take them for the allocation. With $2 billion, it may take some time, but we won't get our money until sometime in June or maybe even July, depending on when the Treasury releases it.
But
Once-
here's the thing. Option 3
Right,
doesn't require any of that money.
right.
So we can do option 3 with,
Right.
and then if we get the state money, we can use that for the water.
yes.
And that becomes a bonus.
Now,
What I'm saying, what I'm just saying is, I think we ought to, at this point, tell the state we're willing to spend all of our money on our water project.
Yes,
We think that, if we think we can contribute $177,000 and they might give us $1 million or $2 million for that, it's big bait. And the odds of them giving us more money are gonna look better, are gonna be way increased if we're using all our money.
that's exactly right.
And so
That's-
that, but if they're gonna come back and we're just gonna get a measly amount, then it's a different discussion we're gonna have about, is that really where we want our money to go?
Right.
Now, another thing to keep in mind. So we look at doing, I mean, you look at doing option 3. Craig and I talked about this the other day, but we've budgeted for road repair. We budgeted for crack fill on existing roads. Now, if we do a new road on,
You don't have to do it.
right,
You got a couple of years.
right. And so I don't know what that savings is as far as the roads that would be redone that wouldn't need that maintenance, but there is more money available because we won't do the maintenance on these brand new roads.
So this is where I am. Based upon new information, I'm leaning really strong to option 3, including West Lover.
Can I just put in one more kind of piece to the puzzle here?
Yeah, please,
Yes.
please sway my mind if that's
Just
appropriate.
as a reminder, and I'm not, hey, whatever the council decides, I'm happy with. Just as long as we have something tonight, I can give the contractor tomorrow. Option 3, these roads would be done as part of the water project. Wrong screen. These roads would be done as part of the water project. These roads, we would have to put out the bid again. So it wouldn't be not necessarily the same contractor, because it's separate funds and we have to follow the city's procurement policies. So we would have to bid these projects out. Now, Geneva did say when we were in the meeting the other day, the water contractor called Geneva, which is his sub doing the roads. And Geneva said, if they were to put these roads out fairly quickly, we could probably hold the same price that we're doing these water fund roads for now. But it would have to be a new bid. So we'd have to go through a city procurement process.
Would that not be the same for option 2?
It would be the same for option 2,
Okay.
correct?
Sure.
And haven't you already put option 2 out to bid, or was that the
2A.
2A of the water project?
That was 2A of the water project,
Okay.
which we got that.
So aren't 2 and 3 isn't 3 the same as 2 with more things added on each list?
Sure.
Just more roads.
Absolutely.
So if we say tonight, yes, we're gonna go option 2, we could turn around later and say we want to do option 3 because it really doesn't change?
Well,
I think
yeah,
that's
but
a
I mean,
risk.
from a contract standpoint, that'd be a nightmare.
Okay,
I think
I mean,
one
why
of the
would we do that?
advantages, we have, and even though it's a small amount of money, relatively speaking, we have some critical mass by doing option 3 and doing everything now because they're here. And I would assume that VanCon should come in lower than other people because they already have the equipment here. They don't have to pay for transportation, already doing the work. And
Or they
So it
might
seems
choose
just
to
slow.
take more profit, you know?
they may, but if they really want the work, I think that they'll do that. And based upon my anecdotal information, I think they would be good to work with us.
Yeah,
So-
the biggest issue, again, I go back to, we've been fighting this battle to
Right.
get a contractor on
Yeah.
site and
Oh,
do
yeah.
the work. And typically, we've only been able to get a contractor to come in the month of October.
Yeah.
Right.
When all their other work is done. If we can give them this size of a project
Mhm.
right now,
And that's a significant part of why I feel like we ought to do option 3.
Now
So-
also consider that if you push for this 3.5 million, you've also got 254 or whatever it is in the well bond that we've already got approval to do more water project. And so if you get the 170, whatever, and you've already got 250, then you're looking at, what, 420?
Okay.
we just need the
Yeah,
federal heat print.
Hey, Paul's trying
Yeah,
to,
we need them to
let's
continue.
let Paul
Yeah.
get a word in. And then Chris.
So it sounds to me, what I'm hearing is maybe the less risky move would be option 3. Because we've got risk either way. We've got risk one way or another. We've either got risk of going too big, with option 3, or we've got risk of going too small and having inflation eat us up, having additional costs associated with getting another contractor in, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, I'm almost thinking the less risky move is option 3.
I think there's some value in that, Paul.
Okay, Chris, what did you? Let's hear from our money guy.
Just want to remind you guys about the $580,000 note. It's sitting there. We have the inflation that's already hit us the past 12 months. So let's get that spent too.
The hundred and what thousand?
The 580.
That's the road bond.
The road bond.
I agree with you, Chris, and I think that tells us to go with option 3, right?
So Ted, does option 3 numbers change at all because Lakeview Way's on both sides? Does that, either of those numbers change?
Yeah, you'll see I took out Lakeview out of option this side. I recalled what happened. So originally I put this together looking at basically adding more roads in option 3 road fund. But then when I got looking at the trench savings that comes with doing more roads with the road bonds that we could
Okay.
add to the water side, I had taken Lakeview and was able to see that I could put it into the water project, but forgot to take it out of the road. So I already
So
made
the-
that adjustment, Carrie, if you're looking.
Okay,
into-
so that final 465 is it? I saw that you took it out of its line item, but is the total now, did you change that too? I didn't notice what it was prior.
It was 580 or something like that.
Okay.
And I just, once I deleted it,
So couldn't we also take out the 15% inflation since want to do this now and save that?
what I would say, Bob, is we could possibly get Geneva to hold their same price depending how quickly we can get this out. However, I wouldn't bank on it. It's a possibility, but then
Let's budget
also
for it.
we're going to have some
Actually,
costs.
I would like to see us change it from inflation to contingency.
Well,
We still have the money there for whatever we need to use it for inflation, or if when they're doing the work, they discover that they need to do more work, we've got 60 grand there that we can use to help pay for that unknown.
yeah, and maybe that's great because we've also got, if we put this out as a separate project, there's also going to be some engineering costs to get the plan set ready and the bid documents and get it out to bid. So
even more
that
reason.
doesn't take.
All
into
right.
account that.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience with me as I try to understand this.
Any more questions from the peanut gallery? Carrie, Paul, and Doral?
Yeah, so do we
Sure.
think that, did the roads committee go over all 3 of these options and they're okay with any of the 3?
No,
So,
They created the 3 options. No, they didn't? Okay.
So
they-
David, can you tell us which of these that because you said the roads committee hashed this out for a while the other night, are these part of their recommendations?
So, yeah, yes and no. What happened was we really did go through about 20 different options. And then what happened after the meeting is Wayne, I believe, Paul and Ted Ted and Wayne really summarized it down to the 3 options, which I would feel comfortable in saying, I think those 3 options were the ones that the committee had kind of settled on.
So
But
they represent their,
we certainly didn't put the spreadsheet together, but they had settled on that.
that concept.
And what Ted did was really put together the spreadsheet that really explained what the numbers were behind each of those 3 options.
Thanks,
Okay,
Ted.
so because number 3, I mean, it seems like we're kind of favoring number 3 just in our discussion here. But that doesn't leave anything open for any other road projects for the next while, right? And so that's why I'm asking is, are they good with?
But
with
again,
what's in here?
what the Public Works Committee did is we said, our number 1 priority is making the roads whole
Mhm.
from the water project. That was the number 1 priority. West Loafer was number 2. Bear Hollow and finishing some of those roads over there that got left to us were priority 3. So those were the priorities, and this does not deviate from that at all. In fact, if anything, it fulfills those priorities.
All right, that's good for me.
This is Wayne. There's one issue that the council needs to be aware of, and it may or may not affect your thoughts on it, and that has to do with Loafer Drive. The city has an ordinance that says that there's no dead ends or cul-de-sacs can be more than 1,000 feet from adjoining egress and ingress roads. The 2 cul-de-sacs that we have down off East Loafer, the Northview Circle and Maple Ravine are both longer than that. So those, as East Loafer remains unfinished, our ordinance is in violation of following through and completing that through street, East Loafer from, or West Loafer going into Summit Creek. So it's just something that we need to be aware of, that is a fire issue with accommodating ingress and egress roads to a closed area. It hasn't been too big of a deal up to now because those areas haven't been really occupied or lots sold or people building on them. With the completion now of those cul-de-sac areas, it's likely that there'll be more building down there in that area, and it becomes more critical potential liability issue with the city if something should happen on Loafer Drive down there and there's no way for the occupants to get out. So that's my concern. If we leave East Loafer off and we don't know what the future holds, if we spend all of our money in option 3, I think East Loafer is going to be more than the 90,000. We've got easements that we're going to have to be likely paying people for, and that's going to add to the cost there as well. So that's my concern. And I wanted the council to be aware of that. So you go into it with eyes wide open and knowing of that particular issue with East Loafer.
So Wayne, that was actually one of the comments that Bob made, is that option 3 plus West Loafer.
Yes.
So it wasn't to remove it or to spend all of our funds. And according to the spreadsheet that Ted put together, we think we can do it with the current road bond money.
Yep. I think it's critical to have option 3 plus West Loafer.
Ted put it in there just now.
Yeah, I just thought, and he put in 140. So that should hopefully take care of inflation.
Yeah, and I
But
can
we-
see that. And I
We'll
just,
see when we get that far, but I think as far as
To
for
Wayne's
planning
point,
purposes, we need to plan on it.
to Wayne's point, and I just want to bring this up so that we are aware that it had been discussed. There were some discussions with Summit Creek about instead of completing West Loafer at all, turning it into a parking lot or a trailhead or whatever. But as Corbett pointed out, doing that makes it a cul-de-sac, makes that whole thing a cul-de-sac,
Yeah.
which
Summit
our
Creek-
ordinances don't allow.
In our meeting today, Summit Creek was going to pursue crash gates that would accommodate residential traffic. There's still options, and so
On West Loafer?
Yeah.
Crash gates, why?
so that you could satisfy the requirement for ingress and egress with a crash gate and save the money.
Evacuation.
Right.
Right, but
If it's open, why do we need
I
crash
hate
gates?
that idea. Why?
Well, because it keeps it closed. You
Why?
wouldn't get a parking lot
Why
if
do
you
we
had,
want it closed? Who wants it closed?
you wouldn't get a parking lot. If you're talking about doing a parking lot for
No,
a
no, no, no,
trailhead.
no. I'm not talking about doing a parking.
Why
lot.
do we not
I
want a
brought
through
that
road
up
there?
just to say that was a stupid idea.
Why do we want
Okay.
it not to be a through street?
I wanted to make sure that if anyone else brought it up in some crazy meeting, that everyone in this room and everyone listening could say, we talked about that, we decided that was a no-go.
I agree, and if they want a parking lot, then let's use some of the adjacent land.
Can I
There.
comment? This is Ben with Summit Creek. Is it okay if I make a quick comment?
Sure.
Love it, Ben.
Yeah, so earlier today, the meeting regarding crash gates was not for West Loafer. It was down for that fire access road to our future development. And so I don't know that we considered crash gates on West Loafer. If we did, that I was not aware of that.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
Yep, thanks, Ben.
You are smarter than I am.
Now, I just want to pause here really quickly and say, Wayne, almost every time you talked about this, you called it East Loafer, and I just want to make sure Jody gets in the minutes. It's West Loafer the whole time we've been talking about, so that there's not a confusion in the minutes later.
Yeah, and again, there are going to be some issues with that. We already found that out the last time we tried to do West Loafer, but it's a project that is, as Corbett pointed out, desperately needed because of now that we've completed the other roads there and they're buildable. We're going to get a lot more homes in that area, and
Yep.
we've got to make an egress for them.
That's right. I appreciate all that discussion, and I think we're landing on the right spot.
We're only down to 5 options this meeting, so that's good.
In my mind, we're down to 1.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's all that counts.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The third option seems, or not the third option, but the third priority, we talked about Bear Hollow. Now, the Planning Commission has seen the preliminary plan that Summit has put forth, where they're turning Bear Hollow into a cul-de-sac. And so, do we really have responsibility for Bear Hollow if that's part of their new plan?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
To some
And
extent.
honestly, I think that's probably one of the reasons why it was down on the priority number 3 is because we want to leave space for the discussions with Summit Creek.
Yeah, I think that's a good discussion point, and if Summit Creek has already considered that, I would appreciate their input as to whether or not it is, if they're going to assume that 100% or a portion, or the city needs to do that so that we have some heads up to planning purposes.
I have a question. Now that we've added West Loafer into number 3 and it has jumped to 626, you know, a little more than that, but is that money that we have access to? I mean, because the other ones are quite a bit lower, and so I'm just checking our budget to make sure.
So Carrie, as I understand what Ted's put here, on the right-hand side of that 620, there's that 3768. That's the balance, but our contingency fund has gone up to almost 82,000. And so I would say the answer to your question is a yes.
That's road bond money.
Yes.
Yeah,
Road bond
the money is coming out of road bonds. It's
And-
not
and-
coming out of operations.
And I don't know who made the comment, but I think that it's wise for us to use all of the road bond money that we can now so we can avoid continued inflation.
Chris.
Yeah.
That was
And I'll just notice that 630 that was plugged in as the road bond money. I don't know. That's a number I've heard. I don't know if that's the real number. I've heard between 6 and 650. So
And maybe Chris has some insight on that. I don't know.
I'll just insert here. As I've listened to everything, I also agree for all of the reasons mentioned that option 3 sounds like the best idea. The only concern I've heard is that we have to get bids again to firm these up. And I would predict if one road goes up, they all go up. Do I understand that right, Ted?
yeah, and you're correct, Doral. So what we did is this is at the cost that the Geneva contractor is currently doing the water project for, to do the paving. We did add in a 15%, we'll call it contingency, but it was really to account for if there's a potential for inflation between now and the time we get it out to bid. Now, Geneva has said that if this were to come out pretty quickly, they would hold the same price. If not, there could be some inflation, which is accounted for in that 15% inflation number. But then keep in mind, there's also going to be some engineering. I don't think it'll be a lot, but that would come from probably LEI to be able to get the bid docs ready to go out to bid.
Okay.
That would also-
And, okay.
So Chris just texted and said that he thinks that based on his best estimate at this point, it's about 600, not 660. So we have around 27,000 that we're not covered for on this.
So, Ted, the other question I have is it possible to put all of this together as one bid, or do you have to do each road as a separate bid?
No, I think we would get much better pricing if we did it all as a one bid for all these roads. You'd probably get more interest and better prices. So I would suggest that we would do it all as one bid.
Okay.
Keep in mind also that West Loafer was done, I mean, the price that we got was based on the design. The design included curb, flowable curb, a high back curb on both sides of the road, curb boxes, culverts. So you can modify that. The reason we went with high back curb was because we didn't have any shoulder. If we had shoulder on the side of the road, would you need the high back curb? Because now it'd be a lot safer with more shoulder. So there's ways to modify that. I think easily to make up that $26,000.
Yeah, and I think that we ought to go with our pre-existing plan, see where we end up, and then visit any shortfall that we may have.
Modify the project.
I have another question, Ted, then on timing. So because we know that it's been difficult to get asphalt, I think you're correct. If we bid it all at the same time, they know it's a long-term project, better cost, better availability. When would we actually start this option 3?
Well, if we were able to have a decision tonight, I think we could start the documents and get it ready to go out here in a few weeks, and then 2-3 weeks have it out to bid. We'd have to advertise for at least a week, but I know we'd have interest from Geneva because they've already talked about it because they're the ones doing the roads now. So we're probably a month from getting this ready to go, but still they would be bidding on it in a shorter period and would give us the same price. And like they mentioned, if we can bid these out like we did, and we'll show here in a minute, the Waterline Phase 2A, we could put these in as one project, but each as a different schedule. So if we find out we're short some money, we can drop one of these out and not award it and do it through some other funding. Or, I know one of the homeowners on Oak Circle, and we could just drop that one out right away.
Hey, I want a gravel one, Ted. You give me a gravel road.
Yeah, he's okay with the gravel road.
So there's no shortage of asphalt. If we can get this out to bid fairly soon, then there will be no shortage of asphalt, and we can just get started and have this maybe done by the end of summer.
Yeah.
Do we need to wait for the left-hand column to
No.
begin? That's
Not
what
if-
I thought.
If you make that decision tonight, the left-hand column will proceed right along with what they've already started on Oak.
Great. I love that.
Mhm. And that's what we need to decide tonight, because we have to give them direction tomorrow. Because on Thursday, they're going to be done with Oak, or Thursday or Friday, they're going to be done with Oak likely. And we need to tell them where they're going next.
Right. And I believe that by having the bid process for the right-hand column, it allows VanCon, if they are successful in the bid process, to then just tag these things onto the end of the project or fit it in whenever the bid gets signed and everything.
Just so you're aware, it'll probably take that long for VanCon to finish.
Yep.
So that the right-hand column is ready for asphalt anyways.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Thanks, Corbett.
Another question then, because it will come up, is just to reiterate publicly that the compaction will be done according to the standard. Would you just kind of talk about that for a minute, Ted, so that any residents who have concerns about that compaction process will know what we're doing?
Yeah, so generally what happens on these types of roads in these trenches, the contractor goes in and they put the fill material in, and they have been compacting. We've been getting compaction reports. But in addition to that, they fill it all the way to the top of the trench, and we've been sitting for several months. One of the best compaction methods you have of compacting trenches is through water. So with snow melt and runoff and rain, those trenches have been compacting for months. A lot of those have been done, plus vehicles running over them. But in addition to that, the contractor has to come back and kind of strip off that top little bit, and then they have to do compaction testing prior to them paving, so that we know that we've got the compaction before they actually put the pavement down. So that's the process. So it's a process. We're not done. I know when the residents were looking at it, they were thinking, oh no, but we were just in the early stages of the process.
Thank you for clarifying that.
So to also make it clear for my pointed head is going the way we're planning, there will be no 2-foot patchwork on any of the water roads that we are working on. And I have never been a fan of patchwork. It doesn't seem to hold as good. Which is this the truth? What the way I understand it? Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
Honestly, this was kind of the plan for the road bond money all along,
Mm-hmm.
was to try and achieve 5 years worth of work in
Right.
1 year, so that we could save on inflation, which was going up
So
a lot each year.
You think we're only doing 5 years in 1 year? I thought we'd be doing more than that with all of this. But no matter how many years, I think it is a win-win for everybody involved. I don't see any cons so far.
Well, and honestly, that's the way it works. When you invest in infrastructure,
Mhm.
it ends up benefiting everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look at Broad Hollow and those roads, and as a snowplow driver, going up there, it is horrendous. The jarring and the wear and tear it puts on the equipment and the drivers, because there's always something hid underneath the road that you didn't have last time. And to get a good surface there to plow on, I think that adds a lot of value to keeping our equipment running. And you do that to all of these roads? Wow, that's nice.
You guys are gonna have to take a break, like you did this last winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We need water.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so we've pretty much talked about the water bond and road fund allocations and probably also the road bond priorities. Is that,
Yep.
already discussed that, Corbett? Is there anything you guys need to add to that?
Well, unless you want an update.
On the water line?
Yeah, let's have a
I'd
quick.
love
Yeah.
it. I'd love an update.
Get that quick one.
So on the water line replacement, they're on Vista Circle right now. As soon as they get done with Vista Circle, as far as the main line, they'll jump down and do Woodland Ridge. And once they get Woodland Ridge done, all of the main line will be done on the west side of town. The service crews are on Oak Circle right now. They've got maybe one or two left. As soon as they're done there, they've got two up on Oak or on Vista Circle.
Okay, so just to clarify for everybody listening that's not totally familiar, which is above? Oak Circle or Vista Circle?
Vista Circle is higher.
Okay, and then Oak Circle, and then Woodland Ridge is below that, right?
Oak Ridge and Woodland
The
Ridge.
service crews are actually connecting the homes.
Yeah, the service crews are connecting the homes as they go. So once they get Woodland Ridge Circle done, they'll have those service laterals to do. And once they're done there, they're jumping up to Broad Hollow. The service crew will jump up to Broad Hollow and get those services done. The asphalt guys, Geneva, when I drove by at 3 o'clock today, they had ground everything down from Dick Cottom's where the project started all the way down to Valley View. They're grading it and compacting it as they go. So they anticipate being done with Oak by Friday this week. So if we make that decision tonight, then the pulverizing crew will just do the cul-de-sacs instead of leaving. They'll start pulverizing the cul-de-sacs, Oak Ridge Circle, on the west side of town, and then just keep going.
So just kind of adding another thing to look forward to in our planning. As I was driving around looking at roads the other night and go down Oak and you make that hard right turn at the bottom, I hope that at some point we can figure out how to make that a more attractive, appealing corner. Those Jersey barriers there are kind of trashy, to be frank about it, and it'd be interesting to look at some additional value or additional things to do there.
Bob,
Yeah,
I would like about a 60-degree bank.
So you get more air or what?
So we can
no,
go
I-
quicker around the corner.
I don't fly
Instead of
off
going
the edge.
15, you can go 60.
Doral's sledding.
So we've not included anything for that
I
down there.
And that's why I mentioned
But-
a forward-looking, it'd be nice to have some conceptual discussions.
It would
But
be.
once they're, now let me go back. So once they're done, the main line crew, once they're done with Woodland Ridge, then they'll go over to then they'll start on Oak, heading east on Valley View, while the service crews go up and do Broad Hollow. And then once the service crews are done with Broad Hollow, they'll come and chase the main line crew on Valley View.
Hey, Corbett, just to clarify, did I hear you say that you figured that Woodland Ridge would be done by the end of this week?
Yeah, they thought they could be done with it tomorrow, but they ran into some snags. More phone line, gas line, fiber on the end of Vista, which took them most of today.
Okay.
So they're half a day
Um,
behind what they thought they could do.
The reason I ask is I've got somebody on Woodland Ridge that's one of my neighbors that was asking for purposes of the chipping day. They wanted to go and start clearing trees and they didn't know where to put all the brush because of the pipes and the gravel and the sand. So I'll tell them that's gone. But are we still potentially going to need to send a word out to say, hey, if you're going to do chipper day, if you're going to cut, is that going to be a problem for these crews if all of a sudden they've got piles and piles of brush to worry about?
The only thing we're asking is that they don't pile their brush on the water, where their water meters are, just because the crews will need to get to those locations. But as long as they're not piling on the asphalt or they stay a little bit back from the asphalt, they won't be in the way of the pulverizing crew either.
Corbett, I have a question. we've had recently over the last week or so, we've had an increase in the contractors cutting the fiber lines, and has something been said to either the contractor or the fiber company to make sure that Blue Stake is correct?
We've talked to them. I mean, please
Not our
realize that
responsibility. It's not, I know it's not ours.
VanCon does not want to dig those up. I mean, they're not, but they can only do what is located correctly. Utopia marks their own stuff. And if they're
Okay.
not marking it correctly, there's no way that VanCon can avoid it. Plus, the pulverizing crew grabbed it about the same location as the mainline crew because it was right underneath the asphalt. Instead of being there's a communication zone, and the communication zone is supposed to be between 18 and 24 inches from the surface. Now, when Utopia installed that stuff, or B. Jackson, whoever it was, some of that stuff got installed right below the asphalt. And there's no way that they could run a pulverizer and not grab it and tear it out. The pulverizer grinds up the asphalt, and it also mixes that asphalt with the road base that's underneath it. So they're 3 to 6 inches lower than the bottom of the asphalt when they pulverize, just so they can mix it all up and make better road base out of what's there.
Right.
So
I just
they don't
was-
want to hit it on, they're not trying to hit it on purpose, but
Well,
if
of
it's
course
not
they're not.
marked,
So is there anything that we can encourage
depends.
Utopia to continue to mark the lines so that we don't have this every week disruption?
And I don't think, Carrie, from my understanding, it wasn't really a marking issue. It was that it wasn't buried deep enough to start with. So it could be located correctly, it just wasn't deep enough in the ground where it was supposed to be.
All right, so
Mark right off.
we might continue to see disruptions in the fiber line just because of that issue that it's not deep enough.
If it's marked, and I mean, it's going to be a legal issue between the contractor and the service or the utility, whether it's Utopia or the phone company, whoever. If they're not within the appropriate depth, then they fight about who pays for the repair. If it's been located and it's at the correct depth, there's no question that the contractor pays the cost of repairing it. But there's some gray area when the utility isn't deep enough and it gets caught and hit by the contractor.
I guess we just want to clarify for the residents who are listening that this is not a responsibility of the city. It's between the contractor and the fiber company to have that located and where it's then hopefully not dug up. And if there is an issue, the two of them work together to find out who pays for it, as well as any problems associated with that. Because we've been getting a few calls saying, why is the city doing this? Or why is it doing that? And this doesn't have anything to do with us. It is with them on their contract.
Correct. It's not a bill the city's going to pay. It's between the contractor and the service provider.
It's just inconvenient.
Okay. Next item on our works.
Oh, one
session.
more question. We had a citizen who asked if, are we going to continue hauling dirt up Deep Forest, or will that quit in June?
That's up to you guys. I mean, again, consider that every load that goes up there is a load you're not paying to haul out of town, and it's a load that's not destroying Woodland Hills Drive. So that's up to you guys.
Okay, so is Deep Forest, where it's all been broken up from having as many trucks on there recently, going to be paved as part of Broad Hollow or some of the others, or because it's not on the list?
It was already fixed. I mean, all the damage that we did to it when we built the debris basin up on Eagle Nest,
Mhm.
Greg and those guys have already fixed all of that.
Right, but I think there's been some additional damage since these bigger trucks have been coming and hauling dirt. some of the residents feel that way, and we might want to, we don't need to discuss it here, I guess, but at least have it as a discussion that the road committee should take under consideration, because the people who live there feel like there's still some damage that has been happened after the mitigation with those trucks that are going up there. And I don't know, Ted, if that contract for phase 2, does that allow for them to haul the dirt off site, or is that maintaining that we're continuing to haul the dirt there?
Well, so we put that they have to haul excess trench materials from the construction site, and they put a price in there to do that. If it's the same contractor, I'm sure they're thinking that it's going to go possibly to the same site, but we've not gotten near the amount of water line in this one, so it won't be near as intensive. But even at that, I mean, it's not, and you hate to say it's a contractor's fault, because it's really not. These roads are just not built like they should have been. They don't have the structural section they should have had when they were constructed. And so it's tough to blame the contractor, because he's working hard to save the city money. And I know Deep Forest has been a heavily traveled road. It's still probably not as in bad a shape as a lot of the roads that we're looking at redoing. But at some point, it probably should be on a list.
And I think that's a great point, Ted. I would like to, at some point, see an evaluation as to where Deep Forest fits into the priority list.
Yeah, I would too.
Well, and Eagle Nest, and I mean, that's.
Well,
Woodland Hills Drive
Woodland
and
Hills
every other road
Drive.
that we're
Yes,
tearing up.
I understand it, but since we're specifically talking about a citizen's request for Deep Forest, I think to just, respond by saying, let's study it and let's put it on the list and see where it falls.
Yeah.
Because like Ted said, I think it's in a lot better shape than some of the other roads, but after we get some of this work done, it may start to rise higher in the list. And so let's do it scientifically, if I can steal that from our administration, and do it in the priority of all of the other things.
So
Yeah, I would agree with that. If we can, I mean, the money that we're saving by having those truckloads go up there, we might want to consider at least putting them on the list so that we can reevaluate it when we're finished.
So I've had 2 residents then, one who's currently building on Sky Lake at the top, and one who's just purchased a lot above Marcy Adams and Byron Adams. And they would like to know when Sky Lake is going to be repaired.
Yeah, those homeowners can't even barely get to their homes, because we've had that blocked off for quite a few years.
Well, their homes, the location of their home is prior to where it's blocked off. So they're just wondering about that hammerhead that's at the top and the bottom portion above Marcy and Byron's home.
I suggest we add it to the list and see where it falls.
Scientific evaluation.
Yep.
Use
Yeah, will the roads committee look at that one sooner than later, I think, because we've never repaired those roads ever. We've only closed them, so they're pretty rough.
I didn't know there was asphalt there. That's how bad they are. So they may rise pretty quick. I don't know, but I think we just need to see where it fits in the big picture.
Okay, but
Where's the money coming from?
keep in mind,
I understand that. That's why we put it on a list, and when we get the money and that we do it, and maybe we have to look at some priorities and that kind of stuff. But let's let the data drive where we do what we do.
well, and we are.
I'm just saying it.
Right. Well, and safety, because there are some safety concerns on those properties on Sky Lake. Some significant safety issues.
So can we just put those on our public works list so that we have a priority list?
Yes.
They're there. Okay, we need to move on. Number 3, the approval of bids for the Phase 2A water line replacement for East Maple Drive and Settlement Drive using leftover funds from the well bond. Corbett.
What do you want to do?
Explain that to me, please.
Well, we've taken from the well bond from 2014 or whenever we did the well, we've got 254,000 or something like that left over. So what we did, we looked at how much road could we do and where would it be the best used. So we've already talked about the phase 2 of the water project. That's $3.5 million. This is part of that project. So what does it do to us to do this part of the project now? We've already got the engineering done for it. We've already bid it out. The bids are what you see here. Down at the bottom, if you look at that, we take out, if we take the road, I mean, we don't have enough money to do both projects with full road repair or full width, pulverize and new asphalt. Do we want to consider doing one of them, both of them, take the road portion out of it and do a trench patch?
How many bids did we get?
We only had, well, we had 5 interested, but only 1 responded, and that was
Only one
Vancon.
fulfilled it.
Yeah.
So
If you guys are talking, we can't hear you.
I'm
May-
sorry,
I
I
want to check your mics.
was looking at my screen
Can
and,
you hear him now?
hello?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you now.
I'm sorry, thank you. Like Doral said earlier, I hate patches. I'd like to avoid them, but maybe we can't. So if we, so if I understood what you said, Corbett, that this is part of phase 2 of the water project, and we're looking at whether or not we want to accelerate it. And if we accelerate it, then the money that we use to do this work would then free up some funds in phase 2, I assume. Are there projects that we need to do that we're not doing?
I would probably defer to Ted. Ted, what would happen if we started a portion of the $3.5 million phase 2 project before approval?
Well, so, yeah, and there we're talking about a couple different fundings. So it would basically, it would reduce the size of phase 2 by the amount spent here. But phase 2, by the time we get the funding in place, the project gets designed. Once again, that $3.5 million could be even a little more. We try to account for inflation, but so I don't know that I would right now discount that phase 2 wouldn't still cost $3.5 million. This is money that when we did the well project, as Corbett described, was left over after we completed the well. It's already been accounted for in our water, from what I understand, it's already been accounted for in our water expense fund to repay the entire loan. So the Division of Drinking Water emailed and said, hey, do you guys want to use the rest of this well money? And you can use it for whatever you want to use it for, water related. So we hurried through together a project with a couple of sections of 6-inch water line that have been problematic, and also our small sections between connecting 8-inch water lines. So rather than have 8, 6, 8, this would just make it a continuous 8-inch water line in Maple in a small section of settlement. Now,
We're able to combine phase 2 money that we're trying to get, grant, 0 interest loan rate, whatever that may be, plus the bond money. Then we would be able to do more work, I assume. And what is our best guess on when phase 2 money will be available to start turning dirt?
The $3.5 million,
Is that phase 2 money?
that's phase 2.
Okay, when?
Carrie, I'd defer to Carrie.
I thought on that, I thought she said something in the neighborhood of July-ish.
Yeah.
Well, there's 2 things there. I mean, because we've asked for the state to give us money, but at the same time, we are asking for that in a bond. So depending on how much the state might give us will depend on the other. Ted, make sure I'm saying this correctly. We are going forward as if we're not getting anything other than the 177. And then if we get the other money, we can use that money, other bond money as our match if the state asks us to.
See, and
Yeah,
I think we
yeah.
take the 177, half of the 177, and make up the difference on this 56.
Okay,
And then we could take the bond money, half of the 177, and we could pay for this entire project.
that's kind of where I was going. And so do we have the timing to where we can, I assume that we're going to have to put this out to bid.
No, it already
It's
is.
gone to bid.
It's already gone, so it's
All
ready.
we have to do is accept it.
Okay,
It went to bid. There were 5 interested. VanCon was
Okay.
the only one that followed through and submitted a bid.
all right. So VanCon's got their crews here, so they could potentially go to work pretty quick.
As soon
And
as they're done with Valley View, they would jump down and do Maple. Again, trying to stay ahead of the asphalt crews
yep,
so that everything could get done while everybody is here, rather than having them take off. And then
I would love to see replacement of the road on Settlement. I'd love to see that. Because that is
So with the budget,
that's a
like the
roller
roll-
coaster
You
ride.
don't like the roller coaster?
Nope, not at all.
Maybe,
And I don't think the snowplows do either.
maybe,
Yeah, and I think there's some things over there on Maple that are a high priority too, so. if
So-
we can Make
I-
this
so I
happen, I
guess-
feel like this is something that we should definitely consider.
can I? throw in
Ted,
more-
I
Ted,
like-
wait, let's hear from Ted.
So what you're looking at is this is bond money the city already has, right? So
Yes, sir.
this $250,000. So if we don't spend this, it just goes away. The city doesn't get charged for it essentially.
Mhm.
So the option was to spend it. This $56,000 deficit, I don't know that we'd be able to take part of the 177 and put it into this fund, if that makes sense. Because it's different pools of money. What the 177 coming as part of the American Recovery Plan.
but
versus-
we got told we could use it for water, roads, sewer, or broadband.
You could, but we would have to put it as probably a separate project. In other words, we couldn't take just a portion of the 177 and put it into this PTIF account or bond money. It would have to be something we would have to cover separately. And that,
For
there's
instance,
ways to
Ted-
do that. There's ways
Ted,
to-
why couldn't we just take West Loafer out of the road bond funded project and fund West Loafer with the 177?
Once again, we could, but this is bond money we already have from Division of Drinking Water. That other money is coming through a different avenue. So in other words,
Well,
we can't mix, we can't just take money and put it into this account and say we're covered. But there's ways around it. We'd have to do a separate contract. It becomes a little bit convoluted. We could do it. We just have to do a separate contract with the contractor that would be a city project, not a Division of Drinking Water funded project.
Okay.
Right. And it's really important for us to remember that all these different funding streams have a lot of paperwork involved with it. And so although they're all going to this, what we consider the same projects, we have to keep them very separate for the accountability and responsibility factor.
Well, that's why we've got the wizard Chris with us. Thanks, Chris. I like Dave's proposal, and I think we ought to move forward with this and do whatever artistry we need to make it happen with the funding.
Federal funding, I'd be really worried, not worried, but concerned that the paperwork is maybe pre-approved before you spend the money. So we don't get stuck with 170,000.
Yeah, I was thinking that we can do the water replacement, and hopefully the money would be here by the time that's done to allocate it. If not, then we'll have to figure another way of doing a patch or something.
Like we could have one of the roads be a city
That-
project rather than
Both.
all of the roads.
Yeah, but yeah, again, use artistry to make it work. And sorry, Chris.
Well, and Chris, like I said earlier, for the I'm trying to always remember the acronym ARP money. The league has offered to have some assistance in all of that paperwork. So we just haven't seen, because the money just barely was allocated to the state yesterday. and it hasn't gone to any cities yet. They're still in the process of working through how that's going to be and how they're going to be able to help us, but they said they will be a resource.
You know,
But we only get to use half of the 177 this year and the other half next year, correct?
Well, but
Yes.
even at that, for instance,
I-
if you're looking at the road bond money, which is your money, it's
Mhm.
you've already got it. And the water project or the well bond money, which is your money, but it has to be used for water related. Even if you took Valley View and did a patch on Valley View, there's a $74,000 savings. If you did the patch and you didn't do the full width improvement, there's a savings of 74,000.
so
I think you guys can work out that detail. I just say that we move forward with the
Yeah.
concept of doing this.
And the plan B, Bob, to this is, or I should say council, is that, say like we award tonight the both Maple schedule, bid schedule A, bid schedule B, Maple and Sullivan. And we get, it's gonna take them, some weeks to get the water line work done. And we get that far down the road, we figure out that, oh, we can't make this mix and match and we gotta do a separate project or something. We can always do a change order to this contract and change order out the full width of the road and just do a trench patch until we can do a separate contract for that. So there's always I guess there's always a backup plan.
Yeah, I like that idea, Ted. That's creative.
I can get real creative with other people's money.
So do you guys know what you need to know to
Yep.
move forward during our meeting tonight? Okay.
Yep.
All right. The next thing on our agenda for the work session is the proposed change to the city code, the standards to allow private roads, streets and gates in the city of Woodland Hills.
So I thought at our last meeting, we determined that we were going to do a test and see what kind of feedback we got from having a fully functional gates, at least on the upper gate, if not both of them. I don't remember that detail. But I was kind of expecting, and maybe it was my misunderstanding, that the gates would be functional last Saturday or Monday or something like that. And I would like to see that test done first before we make any decisions.
Okay, but that's a different discussion than this, because this is gates on private roads.
Oh, I thought we already approved that.
No, we haven't. So
No.
this is the discussion about the
Allowing-
private roads. The
Allowing
public,
private roads.
the one that we approved for the trial next time after Summit Creek was able to go in and assess and do maintenance, they requested that we change the timing starting May 17th. So we put out that announcement. I don't think it's been sent out on Everbridge yet, but we posted it on social media, just that we're going to do a trial and to put your feedback in. And I gave the email to put their comments in on that trial, but that's on the public road, not the private roads. So two
Right.
different issues.
Our last meeting, we had two discussions. One was the test on the public, and that we basically agreed that we would have private roads and gates on private roads.
It,
And here's my main thrust in private roads is that we don't have to pay for the maintenance of them.
okay, so I think it's helpful for us to not mix these two
Yeah.
topics.
Okay.
When we mix them, we kind of confuse
So
ourselves.
which two topics are you talking about?
right-
The
So
public
there are
roads or-
gates on public roads,
Okay,
which I can't even begin to describe how disappointed I am that a 1-month trial was approved. That was, in my opinion, one of the worst decisions I've seen. Having said that, private roads are a different matter.
agree.
So private roads and gates, I believe strongly in property rights, and Summit Creek owns this property. And if they want to develop it in a certain way and make those private roads, I'm a little less inclined to be bothered by that. However, I will say this. My concern is the way I read this ordinance. I don't understand what there's no understanding what the private gates are, how they function, what will be allowed to come in, what will be allowed to go out. I mean, there's nothing except saying that private streets shall be allowed. That's fine. But the private gates don't say anything. Yeah,
I think
and so I wonder what that means. And then the other thing I wonder is, do we want in this ordinance, do we want to have things like, any definition of what easements we might need, it just, as I read this, I was like, wow, there's a lot missing here.
I think that those are valid concerns, and I think that we need to work out the clarity on those and how that they appear in the ordinance, or if they appear in some sort of agreed upon contract with Summit Creek. I don't know what the best mechanism is.
Exactly. If all we had was a statement in here saying that whenever this is done in the Mountain Villa overlay zone, the details need to be approved by contract or negotiated by contract.
Yeah.
I'd be better with that, but this doesn't even have that in here.
I kind of prefer not the ordinance, because I think that it makes it more manageable to do it contractually.
Well, but if you don't have something in the ordinance.
That's right. Well, it has to point to the contract, authorizing that there would be a contract that would define X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And because there are certain requirements that I think that we as a city should not advocate our responsibility. And one of those is, I think that we need to insist that all gates have cameras, and that those cameras are viewable at the city center. The other thing I think that is important is that all gates need to have operational capability from the city center. There is new technology, and I think it is up to 15 miles that you can control the gates from that far away. I didn't do a lot of depth in the study of that, but it exists, and I think that that part of the contract needs to say how we use that control, how we use the video that is captured, how is there capability in the system where the fire chief can open up the gates or whatever with an app. Any of those types of things that enhances the overall security and consistency of the operation needs to be spelled out in a contract that we negotiate.
Yeah, and I think, so again, just going back to the ordinance as it sits in front of us, I think all of these things can totally be worked out. I think we just need, I'm just concerned that the way the ordinance is sitting in front of us, there's not enough meat on these bones.
I agree, and we probably need to table it till we get that.
Well, a great, I mean, I was thinking, since the other thing is the building height ordinance, I'm like, how tall can a gate be? I mean, are we going to get Wizard of Oz gates? Or are we going to get, what kind of gates are we going to get?
That's right.
So we just need to, and again, it doesn't have to be like down to the design. I'm just saying, like, what are we really approving here?
What is the criteria that we want to have that creates the look and feel and operational capabilities of these gates? And
well, the look and feel, I'm okay with Summit Creek deciding.
Well,
but I do think
I added that because you talked about heights. I'm sorry. I'm
yeah,
sorry. I went down
again,
that rabbit hole.
You remember the Wizard of Oz, how, like, 400 foot tall.
Yeah.
gates.
But
to get
I
in.
only add that because you mentioned wizard of height of gates. But again, I think those could be negotiated. I think that we need to look at criteria-based ordinance and not specific details down in the weeds of what the color is going to be and how fast it opens and closes, that kind of thing. But we need to have some sort of conceptual 50,000 foot criteria.
So do we need to ask Wayne for the planning commission to go back and revisit this?
I think that would be helpful. And again, you know, as far as giving direction to Wayne and the planning commission, you know, we're not asking for them to get down into the deep design details, but more, okay, private streets. So again, private streets shall be allowed only in the R119 Villa overlay zone. Okay, fair enough. So what does that mean? What are other things that we as a city need to have in the private street? Easements, cross sections, others, even having a statement saying that all private streets shall follow all other city standards would be great. You know, that would be enough for me. But again, we don't have that with what's in front of us.
And
So-
I think that it is good if Wayne would be willing to accept that. I would love to see that it be a collaborative effort with the developers so that what we decide is something that is doable with the contractor within their vision of what they want to do, and that we don't overstep our desire to have oversight to where we have control, but we need to have oversight.
Okay.
Let me add?
Yes, Wayne?
The ordinance was changed, and that's the recommendation that is before you, are those areas that prohibit that kind of activity now. What you all are talking about and would best be included in a development agreement. Now, one was supposed to have been done, but the council never did it way back when Summit Creek, and before that, Don Meekum was developing that area. So what may be unique to Summit Creek in R119 as they want to have functioning gates might be a little bit different with another developer in the same kind of zone. So again, those items are best covered in a development agreement with an understanding of how the gates will operate, what they'll do, and that sort of thing. So I agree with you that we don't want to include that kind of detail in an ordinance. And maybe there could be a few things added to what's being proposed if that's what the council wants to do. But the council has never taken a vote on the principle yet of having private roads and allowing functioning gates on those private roads. Again, we may want to go a little bit beyond that, but I don't think we want to go too much beyond that, as other issues can be covered in a development agreement.
Well, Wayne, could we go so far as to say that this would only be allowed after we've agreed with an agreed upon development agreement?
Sure.
Part of the Villa overlay zone, when you go on to read more in Title 10, and that's why I put this as private streets shall be followed. They'll only be allowed in the R119 Villa overlay zone. Because when you read in that Villa overlay zone, it talks about how a development agreement needs to be in effect.
So do we have a development agreement with Summit Creek?
We do not have one. Also, on your other
Then
question,
how are they developing?
So I think that's a good question, but can I kind of skirt that and hopefully cut the discussion a little bit low?
Okay, wait, let
let me
Jody.
press one more really fast.
Okay, please.
In item number, in development construction 2.3.1, it states all public and private streets shall be constructed pursuant to city standards recommended by the city engineer or his or her designee. So We might want to change that to say that they have to be constructed per city standards, but state HOA requirements, which if it's going to be a private street, state HOA requirements require that all streets be developed to city standard. Because in the event that a city has to take over it, you'll want to make sure that it's all good.
That's a good point. So what I'd like to propose is that apparently we have some gaps and missteps on the different instruments that we need to have with the development of Summit Creek. I would like to propose that the Planning Commission go off and do their magic to get those in order and ready for to be presented to the City Council, and that we then commit that we'll take action on them, and that we won't just vote no on them by not voting.
And
But-
honestly, I'm stunned that we don't have a development agreement if that's required. To the point that I seriously am like, we should push pause until we get that in place.
Maybe we do, but
No further Summit Creek subdivision development takes place until we get the development.
is it
agreement
Summit
in
Creek's
place.
problem or our problem?
Yes.
So it's both of
It's
ours.
their responsibility to provide that because it's in the ordinance. It's our responsibility to negotiate in good faith and work with them to get that in place.
If we all agree that that is the right authorship or genesis of these documents, I say that we don't cut them off cold turkey, but we provide a reasonable time period to get those in place, 60, 90, 2 days, whatever it is, and then at the end of that time period, if we don't have them presented to us, not that we have to act on it because we have responsibility, but I think we need to give them a time to realistically develop a sound document that we then can approve or disapprove or modify, and give them a reasonable amount of time to do the work.
Well, I think it'd benefit Summit Creek as much as the city, because then they'll know, the guidelines, the absolutes and so forth that the city has worked out with them, and so that goes forward then as an add-on to their proposals and the guidelines that they have to help them develop by.
Totally agree with you, Wayne, and I think that's what this discussion has pointed out very clear to me, is that we can be more efficient, we can be more consistent in the decisions that we make based upon these guiding documents to help us. And so I think we need to move forward with them.
This is Megan Fuja. I just have one really quick question, which is I don't know what you guys are referencing as far as the proposed ordinance. I can't find it anywhere. Is it possible to get that posted?
Megan, are you talking about the gate, or are you talking
Yeah.
about, we haven't passed it yet, so that's why you can't find it.
Well, but she wants
Well-
to know what's being proposed.
Yeah. Because we've already had public hearings on it, but no language has been put out there publicly. So
Because
I'm
we haven't
just
decided on anything yet. We're still
Okay.
way up in the air on this live here tonight.
Yeah,
Okay.
honestly, I don't know where this language came from. It sounds like a little bit came from Jody. I'm not sure, like the whole amenities section, I'm not sure where that came from.
That's from our current city code. That wording and continue down with a functional gate. that you
Okay.
guys had
Okay.
mentioned at the last meeting.
It
So
would
like-
just be really great because it's a land use ordinance. It would be really great to have proposed language and then have a public hearing on it. Not saying there's anything wrong with it. I just can't see it.
I would suggest that as Dave is the godfather of the planning committee, that he kind of goes
In
off,
here.
oversees that this happens.
Yeah, they couldn't hear that, Bob, which is a good thing. But that's fine.
I heard enough, Bob. I agree.
And Megan, to your concern, we are beyond painfully aware of the inadequacy of our current electronic communications. And it's frustrating to us as well. So we hear you loud and clear, and we're actually working to get that fixed.
Great. It's getting better and we appreciate that.
It's not getting better fast enough. I
It's all-
hate it.
It's all part of the growing pains of moving into the 21st century and going from a village to a city.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyway, but point well taken, and please hold
Yes.
us accountable to that.
It would just be great if we could have the language enough in advance of a public hearing that what we say in the public hearing makes sense.
Yep.
Agreed. Yeah.
And so you know enough to be able to say something.
Exactly. That would be perfect.
Okay. All right. While we are talking about this, I did want to give a chance for anybody that's in the public here tonight that has comments about what we're considering or what they've heard to just be able to comment. It's not a public hearing, but just for questions and or answers to be
But-
given.
Again,
For a
to
minute.
Megan's point, they haven't seen it.
Well, no, but they can comment on our conversation tonight if they're here.
So
Or ask us
what we
questions
would,
if they have.
what we would ask them to comment on is the general idea
Yes.
of having private roads and gates
Yes.
across public road or
Yep.
private roads.
Right.
And you're welcome to also comment, if you would desire, on the idea of having gates on public roads, although there's not a single city in the state of Utah that has gates on public roads.
Right.
does.
One does?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought we were going to keep these conversations separated, and it's
Yes,
we
we
don't
are.
have-
Yeah.
we
Yes.
don't
Well,
have
again, if
public
we're
roads
getting-
on the
Yes.
agenda tonight, so I'd like to stick to just private.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
I'm just
So
saying.
anyway, if there's anybody in attendance tonight through Zoom that wants to ask a question or make a comment on our general, the general idea, please raise your hand now because we do want to hear those comments because this is all still sort of a moving target.
And this is not an official public hearing.
No, it's not a public hearing.
This is
We're
just
just
a-
giving a
we-
chance
we
to
want
gather
feedback.
some,
Therefore, we can have a discussion.
right. So Jody, will you just see if anybody raises their hand and then, but we do, after that, we kind of need to move on council because we're kind of running around and
We're way late.
falling behind on our schedule.
I'm gonna run out of Starburst.
All right. Jody, have you got, okay, Steve, do you have something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I don't know that you really want to hear it though, so I'll give it. And
Okay.
I'm a little bit more than frustrated at this point, to be quite honest with you. We've had at this point in time 3 different noticed public hearings on this topic. We've had more than enough discussion multiple times at the Planning Commission. And for some of these topics to now be brought up at this point in time, it is I think bad form. We have tried our best to do everything that the city has asked us to do. And we are now at the point where if we don't know what we're doing on private roads and gates on private roads at this point, we now yet miss another year of construction. The fact that we're talking about gate height, I don't think is in any other city ordinance anywhere. There isn't a negotiation of a contract in a city ordinance anywhere that I'm aware. Wayne can, pipe in where that happens to be. Right? The requirement to have gates operational at the city center and cameras viewable at a city center is not part of an ordinance. In fact, I don't know of any developer or city that has that same thing with all of those cameras for every private gate sitting in there in the offices of the city center. As it relates to the development agreement, one was drafted when Mayor Lauritsen was around and for some reason never got signed. My understanding it was because Dave Church didn't want to get it pushed through. Don't know whether that's fact or not, but it wasn't done. We would have liked to have had one done also. It's not, but for us to now be held up yet again for not having a development agreement when we've been operating in good faith for almost a decade is a little bit frustrating. We're trying to do our best to develop our community as part of the city in good faith and building a development that the city residents and the city itself can be proud of. And it seems like every time we turn around, it's another thing that is a problem that puts another delay in what we're trying to do. And if that's the way it's going to be, I get it. That's the way it's going to be because you guys hold all the cards. I guess I'm just a little bit, frankly, disappointed at this point.
I don't think all of the council feels the exact things you've heard tonight, Steve. And I agree. I have listened for a year about private roads and private gates. And I am ready to vote in allowing them. And then we work out the details when you start placing them. If the city wants cameras, they can buy the cameras. That's not your job. It's driving me crazy as well that we seem to dig up little things that halt the progress every time we hold a council meeting. And we don't need to do that. I'm ready to vote on private roads and private gates.
I am too.
End of comment.
I think you Doral, you bring up some good points, because if we're talking about the idea that gates can be put on there, maybe those details can be worked out as each one is approved, because it would have to be part of that particular subdivision's plat, whatever, as the whole plan together individually as it's brought before us.
Well, and it's crazy because we all know that nice communities, I mean, very nice communities, preferably have gates for those residents that choose to live behind a gate. And we're not going to turn that down on any developer, in my opinion. It's just something new that doesn't fit into our current ordinance as far as private roads are concerned. So I don't know why we can't just vote on this.
I think there's a lot of value in what's been said. And I believe that because of the good faith that we've had from Summit Creek, that we can vote on private gates and private roads. And I think that we can then work out the details that fine tune what it is. But I think that we as a community are unique to most all other communities in the state, and that as such, we have unique oversight responsibilities. And I think we can work out the details of how many and whatever the cameras and those types of things are in place. But I think that as a bare minimum, we need to be able to have somebody capture who is coming in and out of our city. And so that when we have incidences, that we have a clear mechanism of assisting law enforcement in resolving those issues.
Yeah, but that might be a different discussion.
Yeah, different topic.
But that's why I said that it can be worked on after
Right.
this is approved.
Yes.
We can work on the details, but we need to have, and I'm the one that has pushed for cameras and oversight, and what I'm trying to say is that I'm flexible to some degree on this, but I think that foundationally we have to have some level of security, some level of oversight, some level of insight as to what's going on in the city. We've got a camera of the city buildings. We probably need to put cameras on other locations coming into our city so that we know we have seen the value of that, particularly with our water tank issue last summer. Cameras were the key in getting a conviction, in identifying who they were and getting a conviction.
I think, okay, finish,
Go
Bob.
ahead, Gary.
I thought you were finished, so sorry. It's sometimes there's a
Well,
little
I'm just trying to say is that I don't think that we ought to cut Summit Creek off in their development. I think that that's the wrong way. If we've collectively missed some things that need to be done, then let's put together a plan to make it happen, and a reasonable plan that is driven by milestones, and that we then move forward, and we do it in a collaborative way. That's what I've been trying to push.
Well, and if,
if
Steve's frustrated, which I think he has every right to be, I also want to just express that I'm frustrated too.
All right, what I was,
And I'm frustrated because it has felt like, and maybe big developments are just this way, and I'm willing to concede that. But it has felt like every time we have a decision, I'm going to use the phrase, the camel comes back in the tent. And yes, I am speaking about the gates on the public roads. We have hashed that over, decided against it multiple times. And now all of a sudden we're doing a 1-month trial. And I want to know where the crap that came from. And so there's
David,
frustration on both sides.
David, where it came from was last city council meeting.
I can give you an answer to that.
can I please say, I've been trying
Yes,
to talk
Gary,
for a while
Gary.
now.
Yes, go ahead.
Not to cut all of you off, but there are some of us online. But what I was trying to say is that, we're reminded that this is private roads and not public roads. We have to keep that discussion separated, even though there's some emotions involved in both. But we're talking about private roads, which are allowed in other towns in Utah. That's not unlikely that it's something new. Private development, yes, they would be responsible for road maintenance. They'd be responsible for snowplow, etc. The roads would have to be built to standard as each development is brought forth for that request. Then we can go into details about those gates. I feel opposite of Bob on the idea of cameras on private gates. Cameras on public property are one thing, but not on private property. I don't think that it's our responsibility as a city to require private property owners to have cameras that we have access to. Those who have them on their own homes or their own properties for their own safety, that's one thing. If they choose to share it with the city, great. I know our emotions are high because we've had some recent burglary incidents. But I do feel that we need to make sure that we keep our boundaries set on what is private property and what is public property. If we need to increase our cameras on public property, then I think that's a separate discussion altogether. But I'm more like Doral. I'm thinking that we've had this discussion several times. If we need to have a development agreement, then let's go forward with that as a separate item and get those things taken care of.
Okay, so if I could, Doral, I don't want to throw you under the bus, but last time you and I moved and seconded the test. And I can tell you my motivation. My motivation is, and I spoke a little bit with Megan about this earlier today, we have way too many people that have strong feelings that currently are not involved in this discussion. I believe that by doing a test, we will get people's attention and we will hear much more about the negative side and hopefully about the positive side of the gates. And so I see this as an opportunity to get more community input on the decision that we make. And that's what I want. That's my motivation. And I am deeply torn with the citizens of Summit Creek that, and I don't know how many of them there are, but there are some that purchased property, built homes based upon the assumption that they lived in a gated community. I sympathize with them, and I think that their concerns and their situation need to be considered. And so I'm trying to gather data so that I can make an intelligent decision on their loss, because if we don't approve the gates, then we are denying them, and maybe rightfully so, but we are denying them the rights of what they purchased their property and built their homes on. And so I'm all for public input, and I want to make the best decision for everybody. And the best way to do that is through public awareness. And I don't think we're going to get the awareness without a test.
Maybe we could look in the records and find out how many lots were purchased after the gates became operational versus how many.
All of them. But I agree, Bob, with the way you worded that. We've got to know, even people that live above the gates that are not in Summit Creek, what their impressions are of the gates. Because I have a feeling that since this last week events occurred, they probably like them even more. So let's get the test going. And to Summit Creek's credit, they coordinated with Craig and I to delay the testing until they could obtain the parts necessary to do needed maintenance on the gates to get them fully operational again. But again, this is the wrong time to talk about this topic. I was just checking in the agenda to see later if we do vote on, and it's number 3, I believe we can vote tonight on private roads and private gates, and I think we should.
And so I think that changing the topic from public roads now to private roads, we received a recommendation from the Planning Commission. Last week, I think there was a general consensus that we liked the recommendation, and maybe we need to fill in some of the gaps on those things now. But I think that we can approve it and send it back, asking for some definition, just like they do in the Senate when they get something from the House and they don't like it, then they go into conference and work out the differences. I think we can do something similar, and that's what I would propose that we do. I sympathize with Steve, and I know that I'm part of his frustration, and I would love to have conversations with him so that we can work out our differences. because I believe that we can come to a good, solid, working solution between him and I. Whether you guys agree with it or not, but I will agree with it.
Bob, I appreciate your comment. My only concern is that if it keeps bouncing back and forth, it's going to be September.
But what I'm saying, Steve, is if we vote on it tonight, it gives you authority to move forward.
Well, I appreciate that, Bob.
And that's what my goal right now is to, and I think Doral is the same place on this. Let's give the Summit Creek development the authority to move forward. And as we move forward, let's work out the details. Let's come to agreement. We've been able to work out our differences and come up with appropriate solutions. So let's do it again. Let's not be afraid of it.
Oh,
All right.
I agree, Bob.
Okay, let's move on to number 5, the building height thing, and with recognizing that we're 45 minutes behind, so let's make it an efficient conversation. All right. Okay, let's hear from her.
We couldn't hear what was said, so maybe the person you're saying, let's hear from her, doesn't know it's them.
To ask questions or give input. So let's hear from Marlene.
Marlene, you're muted.
Unmute. There we go. Sorry. I was just I want to make one comment, but are we talking about a public hearing now? I just stepped out for just a second. Are we?
Hearing, we're just taking public input.
Okay. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate Summit Creek. And I think everything that they have done has been first rate. And I personally have loved the gates because it makes people slow down. And when we're walking, people just drive by so fast. And I'm happy to see the gates there, and I think they serve the city well. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Marlene.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And just to clarify, Marlene, we're not talking about those gates because that's the public road. We're talking about new gates on their private roads that would be off of Summit Creek Drive.
I understand.
About building height.
Yeah, now we are. Now we're moving on. No, but we appreciate that input, Marlene. That's very helpful.
I understood that, and I like their gates.
Okay. Okay, Megan, do you have a comment on building heights?
Yes, I've sent information to all of you so you all know kind of my concerns. I think there are 2 big ways to go here. We can either take our current language and modify it, or we can take the proposed language, but I think that language could use a few modifications. They're simple, they preserve the overall idea. They just help to clarify a bit and remove some of the loopholes that might be there. I've detailed it. I sent Bob even more detail right before the meeting after we had a conversation. But some of my concerns focus around the idea that we use the word finished grade in that ordinance, but finished grade is only defined at the front of the building. And so maybe we should probably the easiest thing would be just to use contact ground elevation in place of finished grade to more clearly communicate what I believe the intent is. Correct me if I'm wrong on the intent of the ordinance, but it seems to me that it's referring to the entire perimeter of the building when it says finished grade. The other thing that I think might help to make it more clear is there's a section, and there were a few other points, but especially right here, it says in the ordinance, it's about 2/3 of the way through, it says the building height will be measured from the highest roof ridge or peak directly downward to a point along the natural grade reference line directly below that roof ridge or peak, or to the finished grade, whichever is lowest. So where it defines how that building height will be measured, it only defines it at one point along the building. So it appears like it's saying that you only have to take the measurement at that one point, even though if you read the rest of it, it doesn't appear to me that that was what was intended. So what I would recommend if we decide to go this route is to change it to make it clear that we intend at every point along the roof to take the highest elevation of that point of the roof and measure it against the lowest of either the contact ground level at the perimeter of the building or the natural grade reference line.
Okay. Thanks,
I also
Megan.
think we need to define natural grade reference line in our definitions. I know it's defined there in the ordinance, but I think it would be more complete to also add it to our definitions.
And just to that point, Megan, that's part of the work that happens when so we'll give this to the codifiers who done with the codification, but what they then do is they'll kind of tease stuff out of this and put it in the format of the codification.
Okay.
That's part of what they do.
And Dave and I also talked a little bit today, and what I explained to him is my only concern about this new code language is that it's going to allow people to cross more elevation lines. And that's not a bad thing in and of itself, but it can often lead to more difficult engineering. And I think we're going to have to be a lot more careful in making certain that what gets done and the engineering that is presented is right. So it may lead to a need for perhaps greater oversight. That's all.
If it's appropriate, I'd like to make some comment.
Okay.
Megan and I talked rather extensively earlier today, and in some areas we agree, in some areas we agree to disagree. And so I think that many of her concerns are semantics in nature. And yes, they may be loopholes, but I think we have processes that make it difficult to go through those loopholes. I don't think we can make this idiot-proof. And I think that we do have controls to help. But with that said, I think that Megan has a point in that although I do believe it is adequately covered, but in a matter of trying to be sympathetic to these concerns, I think it might be good to add and replace where it talks about the perimeter.
Oh, man.
I believe that the perimeter addresses all points, and Megan believes that it only addresses one point, and that's one of our agree to disagree. But it might be of value to add in the words that Megan read earlier about measuring it around the building. Maybe using just a little bit different words. She provided some of them, but I think that we have a good ordinance, and I think that, or I know I don't want to get in the way of having good defeated because we're looking for better, but it might be better to add one sentence.
All right, any other discussion that we want to have on that tonight before we talk about it in our meeting?
Mayor, I would like to make one comment.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Sorry. One comment I would like to make. Megan's proposal that we maybe add the definition to the definition section. I haven't looked at the whole thing, but I think that's something we ought to look at down the road, only because I have noticed, I mean, I deal with codes all the time in my work, and I notice that if you don't have kind of a common place to go for definitions, you do tend to inadvertently drift. So you'll have two areas that you're treating, and you'll have the same concept, but you'll employ different definitions, and it creates a lot of confusion when the two ordinances come together. So I think that's probably something we ought to really consider adding that as well. That's all.
Okay, thanks. Jody? Okay, Severin?
Can you always repeat what Jody's saying? Because we can't hear her at all.
She just told me who's got their hands raised.
Oh, okay,
So-
good.
So we're gonna hear from Severin.
Severin muted.
Severin, we can see your lips moving like crazy, but we can't hear a word. Sorry. Jody, can you get him unmuted? Okay, Jody's trying. We're working on it.
Severin, you have to press the button to unmute.
It looks like he's trying.
Oh,
Let's see.
Hey, you're unmuted.
There you go.
I just wanted to make the comment that the ordinance does say any and all points down to the natural grade or finished grade, whichever is lower. That does not limit it to 1 point. And in the illustration, we have set up what essentially is a parallelogram that goes from the high point down to the low point, and every high point in the house has to be within that parallelogram. So to me, it's very clear. I don't think anything needs to be added to that.
Okay, and then who, Jody? Let's hear from Sharon. Sharon?
I just would like to know why we can't have a town hall where people can really have good discussion about this. It seems that churches are going back, that we could safely meet and have people who really know what they're talking about tell us the ramifications of some of these definitions. I know that allusion has been made to all these different engineers who've been called in, but I'd like to hear from the engineers who can say, this is a good idea to put this in, or this is not a good idea. Can't we have a town hall about this?
I'll just throw my thought in on this. Thank you, Sharon. The discussions have gone on for a long time, and I've listened, I think, to every planning commission where this was discussed. And I feel like there's been so much input on this to this point that we have something that is better than it was and close to excellent. And along with that, the Planning Commission did take this to developers, engineers, and I think it has given me a very comfortable feeling of we have had the brightest minds review this, and it has been tweaked over and over and over. And I'm very comfortable with how close it is. That's my opinion.
Ted, could I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
As the engineer here, I just want to ask, I'm looking at these shared diagrams right now on the screen, and I see that we have the highest roof ridge or peak defined up here, and the ground, the natural grade line and the natural grade reference line and finished grade shown there. My question is, the way the definition currently reads, it says the building height will be defined as the measurement from the highest roof ridge or peak to a point below. would it make sense to just say from all roof ridges or peaks to the points directly below? So that it really emphasizes, because we don't show any lines being drawn on any other peaks of ridges here on this diagram. We only show it at that one.
You only need the highest, don't you?
Well, you wouldn't if you have a big steep drop off, or or say your finished grade drops off at the back way low, then you could perceivably have one of these lower roof ridges or peaks that would be taller compared to the natural grade reference line or the finished grade point below, whichever's lower. You could have it actually be taller than that. Am I missing something, Ted?
So I'll start by saying maybe one or two things, and not that I'm disagreeing. I think maybe there's even a little different way to put that. But so I did have a couple of code readers, architects and engineers, to Sharon's point, because that's what I do, and we've got architects, engineers, planners, and code writers in our company. I had a bunch of them read this. Right off the bat, they all understood what it meant, and didn't have a lot of questions to it. But
Great.
to Bob's point, different people reading it, you can always find holes in anything you want to find holes in if you want. Now, having said that, maybe rather than say all points, because I think the idea is to say the highest roof ridge or peak
on each roof line.
Maybe it's roof line or reference line or something like that. And the idea is what we're trying to encourage. I think one of the things we want to encourage is we want people to because there's a couple of things when you're building on hillsides. You want to encourage people to not get too high with their houses, but the opposite is also true, where you don't want people, or you want to encourage people to build with slopes. Summit Creek does a really good job with this. I think they build their houses with the slopes, and they almost kind of blend in with the slope. And that's what I think in general, we're trying to encourage, is we want people to build their houses with slopes. So in reality, they could have a lower roof line, and at that point, they could go a little lower with their house, as long as that doesn't exceed 35 feet. So I think the idea is maybe we need to add maybe that's a semantic word we could look at a little closer. The roof ridge or peak reference line. I think at one point we had one word in there that said a parallel line 35 feet above the natural grade line, grade reference line, I should say, which kind of draws this picture. But something to look at. I see what you're saying, and maybe it's just a semantics. I think it's something that's pretty easy. I think that the intent of what's done is very solid, and I think most people would understand this, especially with a diagram. But maybe we can look at a word or two here to just clear that up a little more.
My other question is, should we change finished grade? Because in our definitions, it defines finished grade as only being at the front of the house, but in the diagram, it shows finished grade at the back of the house. And so my assumption was that it didn't mean finished grade, it meant contact ground level.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wayne. I think one of the reasons, and we can maybe change it from finish to finish grade or something like that, but I think one of the reasons, and I don't have it right here in front of me, but it seems like to me we defined finished grade specific to this ordinance in the ordinance itself for that very reason.
Will that lead to confusion though, where it's defined differently for the entire rest of the ordinance of that Title 10?
What can you read? Can you remind me what that says in there? Does it say finished grade as it relates to this ordinance or something like that?
It doesn't. It just says, hold on, I'll bring it up if I can get to the right view here.
And if so, maybe that's
wording. Hold on, gotta get to the right screen. As it currently reads, it just says the height is measured from any and all points of the roof ridges and peaks on the structure directly below to the natural grade reference line or to the finished grade, whichever is lower. And then later it says, similarly, the finished grade points will be extended through the footprint of the structure. It says throughout the footprint of the structure.
So maybe that's a wording thing. We can work with the codifiers to clean up a little bit. Just make sure we don't have a conflict there.
Yeah, I just think it would be good to not introduce the ambiguity of what finished grade means in our definitions versus, because I think then engineers will say, but wait a second, in the definitions is what determines it.
I thought somewhere it said in there the finished grade means.
No, it doesn't. That I can see.
Yeah, okay.
It mentions the word parameter,
Perimeter.
which implies that you take measurements all the way around and you look at the highest and the lowest, and that creates your slope, or what your reference line, what Severin calls the parallelogram. And if for some reason this line here drops off, then this line here is going to follow it. And at any point other than the chimney, any point, any part of the structure that goes higher than this line is then too high.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't need to be specified, I believe, that that this has to change anyway. The parallelogram clearly defines it in a visual format, and so as this drops, this will drop equally. And if by chance this here were to extend beyond this line, then it's too high.
That reference line is created by the highest and lowest.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. So if the lowest is going to drop this line, then this line is going to drop with it, because it's going to be 35 feet.
The whole line is going to drop to maintain parallel.
That's right. And if this line drops enough, and let's say this here extends farther out, as soon as it crosses this top parallel, it's now too high.
So I do think the picture helps. One concern I have is we're talking about these parallel lines, and yet they're not in the text of the ordinance anywhere.
No, they're
Now,
not.
you might be able to infer them from the text of the ordinance, but it's not exactly clear that they're in the ordinance, or that that's a defining characteristic of the ordinance.
I would, having read over this quite a bit today, I would say that when you talk about a line will be drawn between the highest and the lowest natural grade point. So now you're talking about the parallelogram. It doesn't use that word.
You're talking about at least the one line. You're not talking about the other line necessarily, but go ahead, because I think you'll get there.
I think that it says that, okay, anyway, going on, let's see where, grade point on the, a line will be drawn between the highest and the lowest natural grade points on the perimeter. Perimeter is not one side, perimeter is all sides of the structure, which will become the natural grade's lowest, the lowest natural grade point, reference line, and will be visually projected throughout the entire footprint of the structure. Similarly, the finished grade point will be extended throughout the footpoint of the structure. And then it goes on and talks about measuring straight down so that you get an accurate representation of the 35 feet. And so I think when you take collectively all of those sentences and use them together the way they're intended, you get a very clear written description of what this diagram is saying. Now, can it be better? Sure. But again, I don't want to get in the way of moving forward with this because of some wordsmithing.
Yeah.
I do believe that what we have written here, as Ted alluded to in his comments about talking with professionals in this field, that they understood what the written words meant. I think that we have a good ordinance.
And I
I'm
will
not
say
saying that it can't be better, but I think we have something that we can work with.
I do believe it's better than what we have.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hands down.
And I will say, Bob, that was one of the comments that came back from most everybody was that no matter what you put in a definition, and I mean, I read specs and codes and everything, you know, all day long, and I can always find ways to interpret things, but the picture is what really tells everybody what needs to happen. And that was a comment I was getting back from everybody is the writing seems okay, but make sure you have a diagram depicting what you're meaning. There may be a word or two we can change as we move this to the codifiers, but the picture is what's going to be important.
That's right. I heard comment from Megan that she believes that somewhere in our codes do not allow images to be used to help define that.
Oh, I didn't say it didn't allow them to be used. I want to clarify that. I said that in our code, it specifically states that the language of the text rules as far as the legality of things.
Okay, so it drives me to the same point, and that is do we need to make some clarification in that allows the use of diagrams? Because what we're really saying here is that a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Hey, can I make a comment here as well?
I have a comment too.
My understanding is when they talk about the language will dictate. What they're saying is clear language will always dictate drawings. But if there's an ambiguity, then drawings absolutely can be brought in and used. That's the same as in contracts. If there's an ambiguity, then you can bring out outside information. This is even more because it's part of the statute. The picture could be. So I think what we would have there is we would only be looking to the picture if it clears up an ambiguity in the text itself. So if the text is contrary to the picture, that's a problem. Just want to make that comment.
I love that assistance there. Thanks, Paul.
And I wanted to also say that I think I remember reading in the International Residential Code that it's the average of the height. So as we're going forward, because we are bound to International Residential Code based on the state's adoption of that, I think our interpretation here is fills that need. We don't want to become we don't want to have a conflict with that code. And so I think that we're at a good place with our definitions.
Yeah, you bet.
If you go by this parallelogram here,
We can't hear you in the room.
We're working on that.
you need to consider stories, because if you don't consider stories, if you look at that diagram, you can design a house that has multiple overlapping stories that would go down an entire slope. So you could have a 5, 6, 7-story house if you don't address stories in this ordinance, which is not doing.
Stories are also
Bob.
identified in the International Residential Code that we are adopting. So that language is there.
Let me play a little devil advocate in that, if I could. If the home does not exceed 35 feet in elevation, do we care how many how many floors they have? Does that make a difference?
If you had enough of a slope, you could build a 10-story house. And I
But
don't think
if you don't exceed, it would have to be a huge house to do that. First of all, it has to
No.
cover.
Well, in a
But-
story,
but-
keep in mind, a story can only be about
If you don't exceed 35 feet in elevation, do we care?
I would
According
think
to
you would.
According to the International Code, the story height shall not exceed 11 feet 7 inches. And so I think that there's other places in that code that limits what the story can be.
And well, I'm not so sure that we're concerned about the height. We're concerned about the minimum height, because if I wanted to, it would be ludicrous to do so. I could make a story that's 2 feet high.
Well, I think to
No.
your point.
No, you can't.
Here's the picture.
Building
think-
code says minimum ceiling height has to be 7 feet.
Okay, thank you.
I think to her point, let's just use the
Here's the
Dream Mine as an example.
Okay.
Exactly.
It's on an extreme slope and it's multiple stories. but it probably doesn't exceed 35 feet at any one point.
Right.
Although I haven't been that close to it, so I can't tell for sure,
can't
but
either.
I'm just using that as an extreme example.
You could build a house that looked like this.
Well, and remember, we're talking,
You don't
res-
consider the number of stories.
we're talking residential and
Right.
not, we're talking
It doesn't have to
residential
be.
and not,
see.
not commercial.
But we have in our development standards that are put together in the plat layout that identifies the building envelope cannot be on a slope that's greater than 35 degrees.
Right.
Therefore, that would limit how steep you could go down a hill. And we have had people, and maybe still have them, that would like us to change their envelope so they could do that, but we're not going to because it violates our 35-degree requirement.
Yeah, we
So
put
you
into
built a
place our,
multi-story house on less than 35 degrees.
well, we have,
Just like you said, the dream might. So if you want houses up here that look like that, on the steep slopes, that's what you're gonna get, or could
But
get.
you're not going to get that. Or you
Hey, sorry, Bob.
this is Carrie, this is Carrie.
Bob, you've got to use your mic.
This is Carrie. I would like to say something. Remember, we're talking residential, not commercial. Dream Mine is commercial. We do have a buildable envelope for residential code, and residential code says that we can't have more, there's no such thing as more than 3 stories in a residential code. And so I think we need to consider that. Also, as to Bob's point, is that it's single family. We also have that 35% grade. So I think that we are covered because we adopt the residential, international residential code because we are a political subdivision of the state and they have adopted that code. So we cannot go outside of that in any fashion. So we're just trying to define this so that it shows where we are keeping within the IRC.
So if I take your comments there and try to put them in a simple terms so I can understand it, Carrie, correct me.
Closer, Bob.
If I've interpreted it correctly. Because we have specifically adopted in our code the International Building Code standards, do we, and it says you can't have more than 3 stories in a residential, do we need to specify in our code the same thing, the same redundant requirement that's in the international code?
No.
And I agree with that, because as soon as you start duplicating those requirements, if the international code changes and we don't change ours,
right,
then we're in violation.
Right. So as long as we are always in, if our code says that we are following the International Residential Code, then we will always be up to date with whatever changes happen on that level, which then our state is required to adopt. And because we are a political subdivision, we automatically adopt it, whether our code changes or not. That's what we are. And so it is prudent that we make sure that our code says that we are following International Residential Code, and this proposal tonight stays within those guidelines.
Hang
Now,
on a sec.
Carrie,
Thank you for bringing this up.
oh, who, I don't want to interrupt you, but I have. some-
Okay. Hey, hang on a minute. That's not the way the code works. Building code says if you build to this criteria, and as long as you stay within the residential code, the allowable heights, the residential code governs. If you want to exceed the height allowed by the residential code, then you go to the building code. The code doesn't care how tall the house is. It only governs how you build what you want to build. So if it doesn't meet the criteria of the residential code, you also adopt the building code, and the building code will let you go as tall as you want.
I disagree
I'm
with
not sure I
that.
understand it.
I disagree with that.
Building code doesn't care what you build. It only dictates how you build what you want to build.
Okay, so
Yeah, but
And
we
so
are
if it
residents.
doesn't, if
That
it
is
doesn't meet the criteria of the International Residential Code, then then the International Residential Code says, if you don't meet this criteria, you go to the International Building Code. And then the building code dictates how you build what you want to build.
Okay.
And you can build a skyscraper.
And so then
But this
What
is
Corbett's
residential,
saying is
so you
correct.
can't, this is
So if I
residential,
try to
single family
interpret
homes.
that,
Hey, one person at a time.
This is residential family homes. And so I don't see where we're gonna be building skyscrapers. We have no, at this point, we have no commercial development. And so from my standpoint, we are talking single family residential homes, and that would be covered. We're not talking skyscrapers. We're not talking anything.
But again, the building code doesn't care what you build. You decide what you build by city code. All the building code does is dictate how you build whatever it is you want to build.
okay, so help me with this. Is there any place because there's two codes that we were following, correct?
You adopt both of them.
And we've adopted both of them. Do either one of them specify the maximum number of stories in a residential home?
No.
Yes, International Building
No.
Code does. Residential code, it's on, let me see, I got my book here. It's on the first page of chapter 1. R 101.2 scope, and it says not more than 3 stories above grade plane in height. No more than 3 stories above grade plane in height.
And
So
what if
it-
you go more than 3 stories above grade plane in height?
That you can't, according to residential building code, you
So
can't.
all you have to do at that point is go to the International Building Code, because the
Right.
International Residential Code doesn't cover it anymore.
But we're
So
only
it
talking
doesn't, it
residents.
doesn't cover the structural integrity issues needed for a building, a residential building over 3 stories. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
This
Every
is
house up
covering-
here,
this is
every house
covering-
built up here is built under the International Building Code. Every single house.
Yes, my understanding, Carrie,
Okay.
and correct me if
So-
I'm wrong, Corbett, is that the towns establish the building height they're going to allow through their zoning ordinances. And the International Residential Code and the International Building Code, depending upon how many stories you are above grade, defines in part which one you have to follow, along
Which
with
building-
other
which
things like the
code?
height of your foundation or
Correct.
or
Which
that.
code you have to
which
follow.
code you follow in each circumstance.
So
So-
with it's, I'm sorry, go ahead, Megan.
Oh, I was going to say, so you could actually have a residential structure that's taller than 3 stories. It would just have to be built according to the International Building Code rather than the International Residential Code.
Exactly.
So with Corbett's input, I would recommend that we put a limit on a number of stories. I don't think it's that big a deal to add it in. And I think that Corbett brings up some valid points, and I appreciate the dialogue.
Bob, this is Wayne. If we add stories into the equation, it complicates this definition because of the story definition that we have. That's been one of the problems in the past is it a story or is it a basement? We're just eliminating stories and going by the height. And that's what most of the cities have done. They define it as a building height. They don't address stories in the building height definition. So it's up to the city to define the building height. And that can be done outside of the International Building Code or the International Residential Code. The city can control this, as Megan said, through the city ordinances.
Well, my point is, I want this to be the KISS method, and I modify what that means, and instead of the typical one, I say keep it simple, silly, and so I love the simplicity of not having stories in here. I also believe that if we take all elements of what we've been talking about and equally apply them, that we will limit the number of stories based upon the 35% based upon the 35 foot. I think that the natural evolution of those by design limit the number of stories. But if it really creates a problem, that we determine is significant, then let's limit the number of stories. But if we honestly believe that in a systems look at how all of these elements interact together, we've got it controlled and defined, then let's not add it. I'm as you can tell, I'm very flexible on this. I just want it to be simple.
I like what the planning commission has done.
Well,
I
that's what
think
Wayne
that
was
they've
talking.
spent a lot of time and effort on this, and I don't think that we need to worry about stories, because I do feel that limiting that height and the slope automatically puts that into place, and it doesn't have any more gray area between a full basement and a half walkout basement, etc. So I think that the work that's been done on this issue has been very thorough, and I appreciate the work that they've done. I don't think we need to change it.
I really appreciate the dialogue. I think that Wayne and Corbett, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson has added some richness to this discussion, and I appreciate it. I love to hear different viewpoints, and I think it drives us to a better solution. And I think that it's important for us as individuals to be agile in our processes so that we can flow and ebb with that dialogue and those revelations and that. And so this is a long way of saying I agree with you, Carrie.
I think Sharon, stand up, Sharon.
Sorry.
Megan, do you have your hand up again?
Then we can't hear you online. So just so you're talking to the mic so we can hear you.
The mic is off. Megan, do you have your hand up again?
Oh, I didn't intend to. I just, like I said, I've already stated my concerns. I just think, I think we can clarify a little bit some of those points just to eliminate some possible loopholes or concerns, and it won't take much to do it.
Okay, thanks, Megan. All right, any other comments on this before we move on? Doral, Carrie, Paul. Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is Public Works update from Corbett.
I think we had the.
Anything else you want to?
Oh, I had a visit with a resident today about water pressure. I guess just so that everybody is aware, everywhere where we can, we are taking pressure back up to what it used to be, if not better. But if anywhere in the zone, anywhere in that pressure zone, if we still have old pipe that people are connected to, I can't take the pressure back up unless we want to risk water breaks again, like we've had that. So we're doing what we can. As soon as the contractor gets everybody off of the old line, we're disconnecting the old line, bringing the pressure back up. All of the hydrants on the west side of town are all on the new line. So all the old hydrants are bagged, all the new hydrants are active and working. So I'll bring the pressure back up as quick as I can, but I can't. And that's anywhere in the pressure zone. So it goes all the way across town. So just tell them, please be patient.
Okay, thanks, Corbett. All right, the next thing is potential commercial development, or the community development committee that we're kind of in the process of forming. Bob.
Okay, Mayor asked me to kind of lead this
And you've
an
only got
eon
like
ago.
10 minutes, so.
Okay, an eon ago, and I was delinquent, but we did have our first meeting. It is in the committee's in a very formative stage. We had an opportunity to have a consultant come in and talk to us about the best way of going about getting public input and defining and crafting the policy and approach. And the first step that we are taking is that we are putting together a conceptual idea of what type of commercial we would like to propose to our community. We're looking at where it could be. We are, and then once we have that concept, we will have public meetings to discuss it, and then surveys to get input to help us make a final decision. And so that's kind of where we are. But there is lots of development opportunities around us, and if we don't act on this, somebody else will make the development, they will reap the benefit, and we will still be strictly on a residential tax basis, and we can't survive that way. Any questions?
Appreciate your work on this, Bob. It's going to benefit us all.
If we pass the private roads and gates thing, then all of these amenities, aren't those under a commercial, aren't those commercial properties at that point? Well, not when we pass it, but when they're built, aren't they commercial properties? Wouldn't they be an example of a commercial property?
I have no idea. You're asking the wrong person.
Okay. Because again, commercial is kind of a funky thing, and whether people want like a gas station or
Sure.
whether they want something more like an HOA commercial thing. Those
just to
are
give you,
kind of the ranges.
yeah, just to give you some of the examples of what we're looking at. We're looking at annexation to help solve these problems, because there is multiple bidders that are looking at the Davis property to develop it. They want high density, and Salem and them are working together to solve that, because they don't believe that Woodland Hills would be would have a listening ear to it. I tried to dispel that and say that we will listen to it and we will seriously consider it, because I believe that there are natural boundaries, borders between the traditional Woodland Hill City and Davis property. And so I think we can do that without impacting the quality of life, and that people wouldn't even drive through it to get to Woodland Hills. We are looking at annexation of county property on 11200 and Loafer Canyon Road. Is that what it is? There by where the Hyatts live, and across the street of that is county property, and they've kind of alluded, as I understand it, that they would like somebody to annex it. That would be a good commercial spot, maybe even for a gas station, because it's down and around the corner from where we are. We're considering, and when I say look, consider, it is just really just pie in the sky looking at stuff. Looking at can we annex the other side of 11200 so that all of that is in Woodland Hills, so that if anybody wants to develop commercial on either side of the road, we benefit from the taxes. And so that's where we need to put together some concepts of what all of this would look like, present it to the community, and listen to what they have to say. We know that some people will jump for joy at it, and other people will say, not over my dead body, So again, it's just let's get the information out there, inform people, and listen to what they have to say.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
and-
the
and
balance,
Bob,
it's the balance between quality of life and sustainability. We know that we're not sustainable on the taxes that we currently have, and we know that our residents do not want an increase in taxes. And so as we go forward with whatever proposal comes out of this preliminary study, with public input, we will be able to feel where that balance is between property tax with sustainability and quality of life.
thank you, Carrie. And Bob, I appreciate your willingness to look into the details about this, because I, for one, want to annex any areas we can around our city. If you study our history, we've only lost property. We haven't gained any for a long time. And so I'm in favor of doing what we can to appeal to those commercial developers in the areas that are not yet in our city. I would really, really look forward to working toward that.
I think we can achieve these things without selling our soul
too.
or our cultural identity, and that we can define architectural standards that blend in and add to the quality of life, and that by getting a reasonable increase to our taxes, we can do many more things to enhance our quality of life.
This is Severin. Just a quick note that if you look at the general plan, when we redid that a few years ago, there is actually some information in there that we developed in terms of commercial development, basically along Lemon 200 North.
Yes. In fact, we used the map in that plan as the cornerstone for our discussion.
Okay,
Thanks, Mayor.
thank you, Bob. I appreciate it, your work on that. And you taking the reins on that. I appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to our council assignments. Doral, CWPP.
Thank you, Mayor. Chipping is on, and they can put their piles out now. As specified earlier, don't put them in the way of your water connection or on the asphalt. Keep them back from the roads a little bit, but they can start putting out their piles now. May 24th through the 27th and June 1 through 4. And I'll just caution residents that once your street has been chipped, do not plan on a second pass. Okay, so you get one pile and you get that chipped, and don't put out more because we won't come through the second time, I don't think. So beware of that. So
Doral, just to let you know, we've sent that notice out both through the Everbridge communication and on social media. So hopefully every citizen has had an opportunity to see it at least once someplace.
I've seen that, and I appreciate what's written. It's just that every year people see the chippers go through and then they put more piles out. That will be difficult for us to go back and get. Additionally, with the grant we've obtained, we have rigorous plans to do more fuel removal in areas of our city. And you can contact our chief, fire chief, for some of the ideas he's got to use those funds most efficiently. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Okay,
I have a question.
Yes.
On the dates of two different sections of coming through. Are they
Uh-huh.
going to the entire city both times?
No.
Then how do we know?
You just got to be ready on May 24th.
Okay.
You don't,
because
you don't know. You have to get it out as of the first date of May 24th.
Okay,
And
that
then
was
you're-
not
and then you're
clear in the
safe.
letter I got from the city with my water bill.
Yeah, she said that it didn't seem very clear in the letter, so maybe we need to
Now,
clarify that.
you will hear where they are working, but that doesn't give you a lot of time to get your brush out there once they've started a street. They're pretty fast. They have 7-man crews, and they'll probably run 2 or 3 chippers. So they can move in a hurry. So that was a good question. Try to have it out there on the morning of the 24th.
What was the reason that the notice was so short a time? Because I have a man who can come in after the 24th and before the 1st, but he can't come in on this shorter notice before that. Why would have sent out a month?
That we gave you the dates as
Really?
soon as we had them, and they were delayed this year because of the new hiring that was going on in the county. So we weren't able to move any quicker. but we hope to have other opportunities such as bins for chipping at another time later in the year. We hope this catches a lot of brush though in our city, and we feel like it will.
So a question, Doral, and this may not really be a question for you or the chief, but there's been some feedback about concern over empty lots that have not been cleared in a long, long time. And maybe putting teeth to that. Do you have any idea?
That's an excellent comment, Dave. And because you asked that, I'll give you one more piece of information. If a landowner is willing to pay half of the chipping, the grant will pay for the other half. Now, we've pretty much committed our funds for heavy fuel that's located to the west of our city down in Loafer Canyon. However, if you are a landowner that has a bunch of brush to get out, right now it's a half price sale. You could get that done potentially by talking to our chief and letting us go in there and clear that brush out, where you pay half of the cost to do that. In other words, you would get a bid from one of those removal companies, and that would be the bid we would use, where the grant would pay for half and we would pay for half, and then our crews would come in and chip that. I'm speaking a bit out of turn because the chief is deciding where we're going to focus in our city to use those half and half funds. For example, in our deep gullies, we want to clear those out, and the area of heavy fuel in certain areas of our city. But this grant gives us opportunities to get some brush out that is concerning to us.
So that's awesome information. I guess the concern that was raised was how do we get those that just either ignore or don't listen to or don't participate in this program? How do we get them to be more compliant? Like, could we go around and, identify the properties that are in violation and send those people a letter? I mean, what could we do to maybe be a little more proactive with some of these property owners?
We have done that in the past, Dave. Right. We have sent out letters. And they haven't been very fruitful. That has been and continues to be a frustration to us. I don't have a good answer, actually.
Doral, is there any property on Summit Creek that the chief is concerned about?
I know of none.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Well, I just, I don't want to get a nasty gram. So, I'd much rather just address it. So
this part of the program can run through the whole year. So we're going to do that after Chipper Day. We're going to start targeting these. I've already got a couple lots that they're on board. And we'll start targeting these lots, especially people that live out of state, because they're never here.
Yeah. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Craig.
The half price deal. So that's our next push. After our chipper comes through, then we're going to start that program.
So
and if people let me know if you have a neighbor that does have lots, that you're very concerned with, that's how I've been contacting them now.
And Chief, I think it's important for us to just reiterate what Doral said, is that to the residents is we don't necessarily get to pick when the chipper comes. We request it, but because we're using other resources outside of our city, when they tell us it's available, then we snatch it up. But we don't have a long period of time prior to that of knowledge of when it's our turn to use that equipment and those resources. So that's why it was kind of a short thing. We knew we were going to do it. We knew it would be in May or June, but we weren't sure of exact dates until the county let us know.
Hey, Carrie, could we get a notice put out about the half price deal?
Sure.
That's our next push.
I know that that's,
After the chip.
We need to kind of have.
well,
Craig-
I'm wondering before the chipper day.
Well, so it's two different, the chipper program's a little different. They're coming through, they're taking care of this one loop. Then this next one, I can use the funds for city property. We can pay for
When you
clearance
say the
and
next
stuff.
one, you mean the June date?
What's that?
When you say the next one, are we talking the June dates?
No,
or are we
well, just the
talking like
next,
sometime-
yeah, the next part of this program. Once chipper goes through, this is for the residents, bring it to the road. The next
And
one.
we need to remember, I believe, Craig, the money has not been approved for this yet, has it? From the city?
Pay half if they pay for half of it.
Okay, so that's a different program.
It'll be,
Right.
yeah, it's a different push than this one, and it's different people chipping. Those will be private companies most likely doing most of that chipping. I've secured a chipper right now that I'm gonna take care of some of the city stuff. So that's all part of it.
Is there any concern that if there's a significant wildfire come out between now and then, that we may lose these crews and we won't have chipper day because they're.
That's why we have to do it at the end of May and the 1st of June. After June, we'll lose the crews, especially this year.
So we just need to be cognizant that there is a possibility that this may not happen as planned.
Well, but the second program is not county
because,
fire crews.
because it's private contract.
It's gonna be a private deal. Great.
Chief, this is Steve Dickert. Just real quick, if there's anybody in Summit Creek that you can't get a hold of, let Ben or myself know, and we can contact them through the HOA.
Okay, I can get with you guys. If you know of some lots too, let me know and I'll come look at them.
Okay, great, we'll do that.
And thanks for your input on this, Craig.
Great. Next, Paul, animal shelter.
So we had a meeting this morning, fairly short meeting that is to approve the budget. There wasn't anything too surprising there. One thing I wanted to point out, and I forwarded this on to all the city council members, if we could get it on the city website or the Facebook page, they are having a vaccination clinic this Saturday at the Elk Ridge Fire Station. But they've got them about every weekend somewhere in South County. And so it's listed there on that schedule that I sent out to everybody. So just to make the citizens aware that there's that vaccination clinic that's happening every weekend throughout the summer in South County. That's really the only thing of note that we talked about.
Gary?
We can't hear you. You might not have your mic up. It just goes silent on our side, so I think.
Can
my
you hear me
turn.
now? Or is it dead?
We
you
can
hear
hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, it's your turn, Carrie.
That's what
Emergency
I was kind of waiting
management
for
and
you to.
Utah Lake.
I was kind of waiting for you to call on me and I didn't hear anything. So
Sorry.
sorry about that. The Utah Lake Commission meeting was postponed, so we have not yet met. We're still working on during interim on some language for a potential bill that would change the Lake Commission to a lake commission, not commission, but what is the word? I'm missing it, but it changes the form of the governing board of the lake. So we're going to be working on that during the interim. Emergency management, we're just starting. I've been going to quite a few different meetings with regards to the county and state emergency management. And we're trying to set up a meeting between our new deputy and Craig and I.
Okay, great. Bob.
All of the meetings related to 911 and solid waste are this week and next week. So I don't have anything there, but I'd just like to add to the development commercial area. We're looking for additional committee members, particularly ones that have been residents of Woodland Hills for a long time. And so if you or you know of somebody that would be interested please have them contact me, and we'd love to have them participate with us.
I think that Paul had a couple of suggestions. So Paul, will you get with Bob?
Sure thing.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, are there any other possible items that we want to consider before we close this work session?
Didn't David isn't he going to give his report?
Do you have anything to report on a county assignment?
On which county assignment?
Yeah, he doesn't.
Yeah, I guess
He's on
you
the
don't
agenda,
have
but
to.
he doesn't have any assignments right now. So
I can share with you, Dave. I'm on 3 boards.
I know
Technical.
he's doing water, so he's going to be.
Okay, Waters.
All right.
Finance.
Anything else? Carrie,
Mayor,
Paul.
sorry,
Yes.
just really quickly, I wanted to, so I was talking to a neighbor recently, and they were saying that the construction on the water system, that when they had finished in their area, they had left gravel and the sand and material, and rather than haul it off, they just pushed it into the culvert, pushed it into the ditch, for lack of a better word, and that was it. And so it was in an area that was already, it'd been a lot of years since it had been maintained, so it wasn't doing super hot, but now it's completely flat. And so they said that they had heard that had happened in other places in the city. I don't know if that's true or not, but if so, could we tell the construction guys, hey, look, we need you to take that material out. We've already, having that blockage is already a problem for us throughout the city, and we don't need it to get any worse. Has anyone else heard any reports like that?
Have one comment about it, that I think that the material is left there on purpose, so that as the trenches and that become bigger ruts, that they have the material there to fill it in. It was particularly important during the winter, and so I think that it's by design that the material's still there, and that as they do the paving and the cleanup and all that, that those materials will be either used or hauled off.
That'd be great. So maybe just a reminder that when it's all done, we do expect that none of that material will be left behind, especially in the culverts and ditches that we have. That's our drainage system, and they've got to take that out when they're all done. That's it.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else? Dora, Carrie? Okay. Well, you're here. You can poke me. All right. Well, then I will close our work session, and it is 9:20. I'll give you till 9:25, and we'll start our. I will call the city council meeting to order for the city of Woodland Hills. It is Tuesday, May 11th, and it is 9:30 p.m. I'd like request David Pratt to lead us in the pledge, and Carrie Malkovich to offer an invocation. Anybody watching on Zoom, I would remind you to please mute yourself through these next 2 events.
And the Zoom people can see the flag in the corner. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to meet together tonight to discuss our city business. We're grateful for our community, for the beautiful mountain that we live on, for the residents who reside here in friendship and who make our community what it is. We're grateful for the blessings Thou has given to our community, for our safety. We acknowledge Thy hand in preserving our city. Please bless us this night that we can have clear thought and clear discussion on the items that affect our residents and that help and promote our city in ways that are are productive and meaningful. Again, we're grateful for our blessings, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. If you guys are talking at the city center, we can't hear you online.
I turned my mic off when I told everybody to turn their mics off, and then I didn't turn it back on. The next event on our agenda is public comment, and Jody says we have DeEtte Thompson who's here to give public comment.
Can you
and
hear me?
Pardon?
Can everybody hear me?
Can you hear DeEtte?
Okay, when Doral said
DeEtte, you have 2 minutes.
When Doral said who was here, you should have said his neighbor. I know Doral very well, and I've already talked to him about this, and he suggested that I come. My name is DeEtte Thompson, and as of this coming July, I will have lived here for 6 years. My husband serves on the Board of Adjustments, I think it's called. So we are interested in the city and what happens and what doesn't happen here. I am very concerned and upset the way, what's it called, Vancom, the company who's putting in the water pipes, and their lack of professionalism, their lack of communication. And these comments I want to make are based on my own personal contact. They never have any detour signs up. We had an experience of a piece of furniture was going to be delivered the day before. I talked to the man and gave him specific directions based on what I knew about the current road conditions. He came up, and of course, Oak Drive was closed, so he's not familiar with the area. No detour signs. It took him a half an hour to finally wind his way around and get it down to West Oak Circle. There rarely are road closure signs, to the point where we had another worker come, and he had a truck with a trailer, and he went down a road and it was closed. It was not marked that, so it was very difficult for him to turn around and try and find a way to get to our house. At one point, the road was closed above us and below us, so there was no way to get through. They never have any flagmen to direct traffic around large operating equipment.
30
You
seconds,
go by
yeah.
and think, am I going to hit that skip loader there, or am I going to hit the guy who's working in the gutter in the hole down here with only his head showing? Last week, we counted 12 trenches between our house, down Oak Road, over to Woodland Hills Road, which is maybe a half mile. There were 12 trenches, and many of them were several inches deep. They were the trenches that went across the road where they couldn't bore under, and no attempt had been made to fill them or maintain them. Now, that's a little hard on your car when you have to go that road anytime you go out. Lack of supervision by city personnel.
Okay, DeEtte, sorry, you're out of time, but we will definitely, if you want to write anything else down, we will
Well, I've
communicate that
waited
to
all
them.
evening. I'd like a couple more minutes and I would be done.
Well, we generally give 2 minutes for public comment, and I gave you about almost 3.
But nobody else is here.
Well, I'll give you one more, and
Okay.
then,
Lack of supervision by city personnel. I understand there's an engineer. Yesterday, when they connected our water pipe, we were out there all day long. No foreman, no engineer, no city employee was there. They, at one point, a couple of weeks ago, shoved dirt along Oak Drive, right at the end of Woodland Hills, where they entirely covered up the drainage ditch. They crushed the culvert that goes down that road, and they put sand. There's only an opening of about 6 inches deep. 6 inches out from the end of this crushed culvert now. So any water coming down that road is going to maybe get in that culvert because the other end's open, come out the other end and wash mud and water down into our property. It's just, and we said, I don't know why they did it. It didn't make any sense.
Okay.
Lack of notification about road closings and work activity. Now, yesterday, or a week ago, we talked to the workers on Woodland, on our street, and we knew that there was an area of the landscape, decorative landscaping, bark, and our 110 address sign. And we said, now, it looks like you're going to have to go right through there. And they said, oh, don't worry about it. We're going to core under the road, and we're going to core under that section to get to your water meter. And we said, okay, that's fine. But look, if you have to change and you have to dig it up, please let us know. And we will remove the bark. We will remove the address sign and everything that's in there, because, and a metal frame that went around it that was welded.
Okay.
We will move that. And yet yesterday morning we came out and they were digging up the whole thing and didn't know anything. And they promised us they would do
Yes.
that. So we have a mess.
You
And
do.
then they put in
All right.
a plastic, 27-inch wide plastic thing that goes down to the meter and the thing. They were putting it in incorrectly. They had it crooked, it wasn't level, and it was pushed way over next to the shutoff valve. Luckily, we had somebody there who was a contractor for another reason. And he told him, he says, you can't do that.
Okay.
There's no way to shut off that valve.
Okay.
So,
All right, Dia.
you know, who is going to take care of these things? Why isn't it being supervised? Thank
Okay,
you.
We will check. Thank you for your comments and that. A lot of unfortunate things. We will follow up. Yeah, we'll follow up on that.
That's the things that I.
Okay, thank you. Wayne,
Ideas.
did you have a comment?
Are you?
Wayne, you're
Yep,
muted.
yep, I got it,
Okay, there we go.
This week is National Law Enforcement Week. And I thought it would be a nice gesture if possibly the city could write a letter to the sheriff expressing appreciation for all that they do in support of our city, and particularly with Deputy Peterson. Acknowledge all the hard work that they do, and let them know that we do appreciate the time and effort that they give to our city. Just a thought.
Okay, that's a great idea. Also, Deputy Peterson's reassigned, but we have a new deputy and he happens to be here tonight.
Wish we could meet him. Sorry, we're
I
not
know.
there. I have a comment on that same thread. Last week was the Municipal Clerks Association National Appreciation, and I wanted to publicly say thank you to our clerk, Jody, and now we have a deputy recorder clerk, and I'd like to just publicly say thank you for all the work that they do for our city.
Could only second that. All right. Any other public comment, Jody? Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. We've got 3 sets of minutes and the March financials and check disbursements.
I move that we adopt these 4 items on the consent agenda, the minutes from March 23rd, March 25th, April 13th, and the March 2021 financial and check disbursements.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion from Otley and a second from MacArthur. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, I guess I'll still, Kinnison?
Yes.
Okay, MacArthur,
Yes.
Malkovich,
Yes.
Otley,
Yes.
Pratt.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes and carries. The consent agenda is approved. The first item for business and discussion issues is the acceptance of the bids for the Phase 2A water line replacement for East Maple Drive and Settlement Drive.
I'll make a motion that we approve that.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion from Pratt and a second from Malkovich. Any discussion or concerns or questions? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Pratt,
Yes.
Otley,
Yes.
Malkovich,
Yes.
MacArthur,
Yes.
Kinnison.
Yes.
Okay, the bids are accepted for that. Great. Number 2 is the decision on road priorities.
I would like to move that we accept priority 3 and include,
Option 3.
I'm sorry, option 3. Thank you very much.
As presented by Ted Mickelson, yes?
As presented by Ted Mickelson, with the inclusion of the road work on West Loafer.
I'll second.
I'll
that.
second.
Arm wrestle.
Okay, I have a motion by
got
Otley
it,
and a
Dave.
second by Pratt with a late second by MacArthur. A late and additional second. All right, any concerns or comments that you want to make before we take the vote on this?
Can I just ask a question of Summit Creek? We've had all this discussion and the implied message is that they're going to be working with us on West Loafer. Do they see any problems with us moving forward with this?
No, I don't see any problems.
Thank you.
We just don't have the full scope of, what that road looks like. At this point, we know what we think is our portion. We just need to make sure that we're coordinating with the same contractor as the city to hopefully save both of us money. So we just need to make sure that we're coordinating in that way.
Okay.
Good point. And so we just need to make sure that we do coordinate so it is a unified approach so we don't have roads that mismatch and are off by 30 feet.
Okay.
Or more, Bob.
Or we turn a road into a parking lot.
All right.
I'm sorry.
All right. Okay. I'll call for the vote on this then, unless there's any other comment or questions. Okay. Kinnison,
Yes.
MacArthur,
Yes.
Malkovich,
Yes.
Otley,
Yes.
Pratt.
Yes.
All right. The Bob motion passes and carries. The third thing is on the agenda is the ordinance allowing private roads and streets and gates on private roads in the city of Woodland Hills. How do you want to deal with that?
I'll make a motion to pass that. I'll tell you, I really struggled with the ordinance itself. Like I said, some of the wording just felt a little weak, but in our conversation, we've been getting a lot of information about other areas that are covered. So I'm much more comfortable with that now. So I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance allowing private roads and streets and gates on private roads in the city of Woodland Hills.
I'll second that.
Sorry, I want to make sure I get the zoning right.
Or 119.
In the R119 Villa Overlay Zone.
Okay. Paul, are
second
you?
that.
Okay. So I have a motion from Pratt and a second from MacArthur. Comments or questions? Okay. All in favor, Pratt,
Yes.
Otley,
Yes.
Malkovich,
Yes.
MacArthur,
Yes.
Kinnison.
Yes.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the ordinance amending City Code Title 10-2-1, the definition of building height, 10-8-5, schedule of minimum area, yard, and height regulations, and amending 10-10-B6, parentheses G, setbacks, yard depths, and frontage for village unit building lot.
I'll move that we approve that.
Hey, hold on, Paul. Jody's giving us a quick summary. Give it louder, Jody.
Summary of it is the building definition is the definition that came recommended to the city council by the planning commission. The other titles where those changes are, it is merely taking out stories. You'll see the red in the ordinance. It's just taking out the number of stories.
Okay. Paul, what were you?
I'll move that we approve that
I
ordinance
second
change.
it.
Okay, so I have a motion from MacArthur and a second from Otley. Questions or comments?
Can
I
can
really
I ask, can I ask Wayne to elaborate on any of those items if he would like to? Your recommendations, your group's feeling about these items?
Yeah, we had a unanimous vote on it. From the comments that were made tonight, one thing that we possibly could do is when it goes to codification, we could ask the codifiers if there was any language that they felt needed to be changed or modified, keeping the intent of the ordinance, but maybe substituting a word here or there if they felt that that would help clarify things. But that would be my only thought on it.
What about those other issues, Wayne? Are you okay suggesting we pass those as well?
I am, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, did you have a comment?
I would just like to thank everybody for the robust discussion. I appreciate the opposing and varied, or maybe I should say the diverse discussions, and I think that they add value, and personally, I wouldn't want it any other way. So thank you for your willingness to share your thoughts.
Well,
And I would agree with, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I wasn't comfortable with some of the things in here, but I believe that, you know, Ted helped explain a lot. And again, this is one of the hardest parts about passing ordinances is, you know, you want the language to be perfect. You want it to be ideal. And sometimes it's a little hard getting there, especially when we're dealing with things. I mean, the only thing I know about building height is that my shed had to be so high so I could fit my ATV in, and that's about it. So I'm not an engineer, but having an engineer's perspective helps a whole lot. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
And for me, even though it seems like an all or nothing, for example, suggestions were given that we're perhaps not going to accept. For me, it's very helpful to have that discussion because it gives me a list of things to keep an eye on in the future. You know, as the ordinance plays out, if we start to see certain things, I think we're going to identify problems faster because they were raised in the public comments. So it wasn't wasted, is what I'm saying, even if it doesn't get incorporated into this draft.
Great.
I'll
right,
mention the planning commission. You know, Wayne used to have a full head of long brown hair, and he used to. I'll tell you, they wrestled with the details of these items, and I just appreciate so much their efforts on that.
I second that.
Okay. Let's take a vote. Kinnison,
Yes.
MacArthur,
Yes.
Malkovich,
Yes.
Otley,
Yes.
Pratt.
Yes.
Okay, that motion also passes. I would like to say thank you to all of you for your good discussion, thanks to the public that contributed questions and contributions to us. And I really appreciate all the work and the thought that the Planning Commission has done on these things, and also you as council members to try and bring diverse points of view to these issues as we try to serve our city. And we will move forward. These are all living things, and they will continue to change and grow and get hopefully better and better as we refine them. Is there anything else that we need to discuss or consider before we adjourn tonight?
I move that we adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn
I'll second it.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for a good
Aye.
meeting. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thanks.